Hey, Mormon Brother Low, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Seats with myself, Greg Hughes Peterson, now part of the Beeson Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we're going to be joined by Blake Lovell, who does absolutely amazing work over at Southeastern 14, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love, and he does such a good job taking a look at the SEC. Had some prime SEC action on Tuesday, and we're going to be taking a look at Wednesday's games with him, just what he's all deciphering from the conference, and going to be taking a look at a national view with him as well. That's going to be coming up in the second segment, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday, as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, do have one or two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but had a fun day of college basketball on Tuesday. Let's dive in, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Kentucky at the buzzer gets the job done against Mississippi State, 91-89 now. This was much to the chagrin of my DK Network Wright pick, which I had the under in this one, and I was writing that up thinking we would get a much better number on Mississippi State. They became a 4.5-point favorite. I had to completely scrap it. I mean, truth be told, I was writing that up thinking I was going to be on Mississippi State on some sort of tight line, which that wouldn't have came through anyway, but I mean, that was a little bit befuddling that this line got up to 4.5, but that does make Kentucky, by the way, 20 overs to 8 unders this season. 71.5% of their games are going over the total this season, and for Kentucky, they get the job done despite the fact that they only went 10 of 30 from three-point range, but it was all about Reed Sheppard. He hit the bucket at the end. He goes off for 32 points, 11 of 14 from the floor, and for Mississippi State, they lose this game shooting 11 of 25 from 3 with a massive performance from Josh Hubbard. Was able to supply 34 points. Mississippi State, they came back from down late. They were in control early. They get down, and then they rally their way back, all just to lose at the end. Arkansas has also been a very good team to the over. They have now played 19 overs, 8 unders, and a push, but they followed home to Vanderbilt, 85-82. My goodness, it has gotten out of control and sad for Arkansas. They went 10 of 30 from 3, and it's not like Vanderbilt shot like some amazing clip from 3. They went 4 of 16 from distance. You had Tyron Lawrence be able to supply 21 points, go 7 of 14 at the free throw line. Van Allen Lubin, 19 points, 12 rebounds, but Arkansas just got in the mouth. They lost the rebound battle. They lost the turnover battle. K-Leaf battle, he had 36 points, but he also had 6 turnovers in this contest. You just have a bunch of ball hogs right now for the Hogs, and just has not been great for them in general. For LSU, it has been a little bit of touch and go for them, as well as to polish things off with regards to the SEC. They were able to get the job done, but no cover for them. 67-66 against Georgia. For UGA, they hold in there despite shooting just 7 of 27 from 3, while LSU went 9 of 18 from 3, and that truly was the difference in this game, as LSU loses a turnover battle 16-13, and they lose a rebound battle 34-31, but Jordan Wright was Mr. Wright. 17 points, goes just 1 of 2 from 3-point range. He really didn't have anyone pop a bunch of threes for LSU. They just made the ones that they took, and for LSU, they were able to get by just barely in this one, and not being able to get by a team out there in the Mountain West who's been a little bit shaky recently. Colorado State has Nevada. They continue to be your best cover 8 team out there in the Mountain West, and just in all of college basketball, they have been a team that's been able to make you money all season long. Nevada now 18-9 against the spread. They get the job done 77-74 on the road, going 10 of 21 from 3-point range, as it was the Jordan Lucas show. 23 points, 7 boards. Nick Davidson, he was able to chip in their 12 rebounds, as for Nevada, they win the rebound battle 34-30. They also win the turnover battle 8-7. Isaiah Stevens, he did his part for Colorado State with 23 points, but outside Joel Scott, who had 15 points, not a lot of production outside of him, and Nevada, they pick up another big win. How about UNLV continuing to cover as well? They're now 16-9 against the spread as a 4.5-point favorite. They needed overtime, but they do get the job done against Wyoming by kind of 75-69, and it has been a rough year for Wyoming. They went 9-16-1 against the spread, and for UNLV, they go 8 of 21 from 3-point range. Dendron Thomas, he was able to be highly productive in this game with 13 points, 4 boards. Now, took them 17 shots to get there, but the Boone brothers, they were able to have themselves a nice night. One in particular in Caleb Boone, double-double for him, 24 points, 12 rebounds, and for Wyoming, they lost this battle on the glass, 44-32, despite the fact that UNLV lost the turnover battle 15-10. They do get the job done. Also not getting the job done along with Wyoming, Air Force, who's now 8-19 against the spread. Boise State just completely land-based them. 79-48 the final. For Air Force, they go 5 of 18 from 3. They lose the turnover battle 14-6. They lose a rebound battle 31-20, and he had Tyson Dagenhart take over this game for Boise State. He was able to supply the team with 21 big points, so he was able to do a nice job being able to get it done. And then you saw Utah State need overtime to take down Fresno State. So obviously don't cover there, but they were able to scave off what was going to be a very bad upset loss by kind of 77-73. And honestly, Utah State very lucky to be able to get by in this one. Fresno State took 16 more field goal attempts than Utah State. Utah State did a good job getting to the line, but only went 19 of 29 at the charity stripe. And Fresno State has been halfway decent from 3, shot just 7 of 28 from 3. Fresno State won the turnover battle by a count of 17-9. Who knows if Eduardo Andre 3000 was out there, if Fresno State was going to be able to win this game. But for Utah State, credit where credit is due, because they did win this game with Great Osabor, Darius Brown combining for 22 rebounds, while Fresno State as a collective, they only had 29 total rebounds. If you're looking at ranked action, well, it has been rough for Kansas without having in the fold Kevin McCullough, and they lose at home to BYU, 76-68 the final. For BYU, they were down at the half. They were able to rally late, and Dallin Hall do a really nice job of being able to help out this cause. 3 of 6 from three-point range, 18 points. BYU goes 13 of 34 from 3, while Kansas, they went just 3 of 15 from the outside, and Hunter Dickinson, 6 of 15 at the free throw line. That's not the end-all, be-all reason why Kansas lost, but that played a big role in it. Kansas won the rebound battle 40-37, but had Jackson Robinson off the bench for BYU, be able to supply the team with 18 points, and BYU has been a relatively good cover 8 team all season long against the spread thus far this season. They're 16-12, and they get it done once again, though. The team that has been really good against the spread all season long with regards to being a fade for you out there in the Big 12 has been Texas. They entered in the night 9-18 against the spread. Well, they advanced that to 10-18 with the way that they just completely took it to Texas Tech. Texas Tech, they get blown out of the building, and the final score does not do it justice. 81-69 is the final. Brock Cunningham got ejected from this game, but there was one point where Texas was up like 57-28. Dylan DeSue, he had 21 points for Texas Tech. They go just 7 of 22 from three-point range for Texas. They win the rebound battle 44-30. They actually lose the turnover battle 12-9, but Pops Isaac only 2 points in the first half, and by the time he got it going, it was too little too late. Cincinnati has also been a team that's been a little bit up and down for you, but they get a cover against Houston 67-59. Houston just 13-2 against the spread. A lot of it is because they're laying big numbers like this one. They were laying 13.5, and looked like they had a chance to cover late, but Cincinnati able to make a nice little charge late. Even though Cincinnati lost the turnover battle 19-10, they actually won the rebound battle by a count of 42-30, as you had, I believe, 3 separate guys for this Cincinnati team, all give you at least 7 rebounds per contest, just couldn't throw the ball in the basket. They go 5 of 19 from three-point range against a Houston team that continues to be number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. If you want a team in which things are sliding away for them, look no further than Wisconsin. Wisconsin entered into the month, I believe, 16-4, and now they're 18-10. They lose on the road against a terrible Indiana team by a count of 74-70. For Wisconsin, they go just 8 of 26 from 3, and Wisconsin went 2 of 3 at the free throw line. Wisconsin actually wins the turnover battle 12-3, but they lose the rebound battle down low 31-27, as Khalil Ware had 27 points, 5 blocks, 11 rebounds, and a Indiana team that has no backcourt whatsoever is able to find a way to be able to get the job done, and also being able to get the job done those home overs in Iowa games. Iowa just barely able to cover the spread of 8.5 as well. They get it done against Penn State by a count of 90-81, and for Iowa, this has been one of your best over teams in all of college basketball as well. 19 overs to just 10 unders thus far this season, while Penn State 18 overs, 10 unders, and a push for them. Iowa scored at least 75 points in 33 out of their last 35 home games to go 8 of 16 from three-point range. And Peyton Samford, a double-double, actually a triple-double, 26 points, 10 boards, 10 assists, and 18 of 19 at the free throw line. Can we give him a quadruple-double for that? He was absolutely tremendous in this one. Meanwhile, without Kanye Clary, Penn State has still been fine on offense. Qudus Wahab, 18 points, and for Penn State, they actually won the rebound battle, 41-34, a rarity for them, but they play even up on the turnover battle, and they go just 4 of 17 from three-point range while going 13 of 23 at the free throw line as well. So that's a little bit of an issue. Villanova, in the month of February, they gave up north of 62 points just once. They completely just laying base. Georgetown 75-47 the final. Georgetown could just get absolutely nothing going in this one. 4 of 26 from three. They shoot 27.5% from the floor, so absolute domination for Villanova. And Eric Dixon go off for 22 points in this one. And in terms of the ACC action on Tuesday, it's a little bit harebrained and all over the place. Clemson, they get the win, but they pretty much push on the closing line of 7, 69-62 the final. Pittsburgh has actually been able to do a relatively solid job to the under. They did a nice job holding in this one, but your best cover 8 team in the ACC has been Pittsburgh, who's now 16-9-3 against the spread after that one, but your best under team, that has been Notre Dame. 18 unders to 10 overs. They are able to lock down Wake Forest for a 70-65 win. Rare over for them, but for Notre Dame, they overcome an early deficit while shooting just 7 of 28 from 3, thanks to Marcus Burton going 11 of 11 at the free throw line, 31 points. Wake Forest, after being a part of the court storming situation for the weekend, they do get stormed as the starting 5 for Wake Forest, all but 3 of their points in this one. Meanwhile, NC State, they've been able to play north of 60% of their games to the over, as they and Florida State both have played north of 60% of their games to the over. 90-83 the final. This one was harebrained and crazy, with NC State going 10 of 21 from three-point range, but Florida State shot 59.5% from the floor, and NC State 13 of 20 at the free throw line. They whiffed on a few there, and Jameer Watkins, he was able to, for Florida State, be able to supply them with 19 points to be able to get them to the window. And then you did see Syracuse be able to take down Virginia Tech by a count of 84-71. It's been an all-over-the-place season for both of these teams, as Syracuse now just 12-17 against the spread, but they were able to get that one done, and they were able to get that one to the window. Other results, you did see Fordham be able to pull off the upset of George Mason, this by a count of 61-60. It's been a George Mason team that has been very up, down, all around all season long against the spread. They're now 15-11-1 against the spread, but for this game, it was 19-18 at the end of the first half, and George Mason was up 10 with less than 9 minutes remaining, completely toilet bowled the game. So that was a little bit of a rough ordeal for them. What has been a good ordeal has been banking on UMass thus far this season, and for the old Minutemen of UMass, they do go on the road and they get a win and cover against George Washington, 69-57, and it has just really went downhill for this George Washington team. Just 6 of 28 from three-point range for UMass. They had Matt Cross do a solid job with 17 points, 7 boards, and despite the fact that Josh Cohen only had 2 rebounds in this game, they do win that rebound battle, 34-28. They actually did lose the turnover battle, 14-13, but UMass, they've been a pretty profitable team all season long, and Loyola Chicago is coming in on a nice, hot, I believe, 7-game win streak. They get that snapped by the St. Bonaventure Bonnies by a count of 79-64, with the Bonnies being able to go 7 of 17 from three-point range. The MAC has not necessarily had a bunch of teams that have been rambunctious against the spread for you all season long, but we did see a lot of action on Tuesday, and right now, your best team in terms of cover rate in the MAC, that's 2 teams, Ball State and Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio win and cover against Bowling Green, 66-58. Meanwhile, for Ball State, they win and cover against Central Michigan on the road by a count of 79-71. And if you are taking a look at everything that we are getting in college basketball right now, it has been very much an overwhelming season, but it has been all about the unders the last 7 days. Last 7 days, 167 unders to 163 overs, so a 50.5% clip to the over, and home underdogs have really taken it on the chin all season long, but they've seen a nice surge over the last 7 days, going 60, 52, and 2 against the spread. That's a 53.5% hit rate. Meanwhile, overall for the season, home underdogs sitting at just 49.3%, 655, 673, and 22 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs still hitting at about 51% for the season, 2,424 overs to 2,329 unders. So that's what we all saw in college basketball on Tuesday, and that's what we're getting trend-wise. Coming up next, let's talk a little SEC with our good friend Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 right here on Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Houston Family Podcast. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Houston Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man, as Blake Lovell, he does such good work over at Southeastern 14. Taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. I know that he is hard at work trying to decipher what we've all been getting in this crazy sport the last few weeks, and he does such a great job with it. You're able to follow him on Twitter/X at the Blake Lovell. Last name is spelled Lovell. And Blake, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me on as always, Greg.
Great to have you aboard, Blake. And Blake, it has been wild out there in the SEC. Now, I will preface this by saying we don't know how the Kentucky versus Mississippi State game turned out, but that said, this has been just a wild season in general. We've been seeing a lot of ups and downs, and just when you take a look at the SEC, what do you make out of a conference where road wins have just been oh so hard to come by this past season?
Yeah, it certainly has been interesting, as you said, when you look at kind of just the setup for a game like this and knowing, Mississippi State was one of those teams, right? Before the LSU game, they were just a team that you could sort of look at and not have a lot of confidence in on the road because, you just kind of looked at how they fared at Alabama, at Florida, at Kentucky. Games like that, they had just struggled to put together good performances against solid teams. And I think they finally did that against LSU. But again, we saw Kentucky not do that against LSU. It's been interesting because Kentucky at times I feel like has actually played better on the road than they have at home. But some of that has to do with a couple of those opponents being Arkansas and Vanderbilt and so forth. But they also have nice wins over Auburn and Florida on the road. So it's like, as you said, it's hard to decipher kind of what you're going to get in this conference. I think the best bet at this point, Greg, is looking at the home teams because, the home teams do seem to hold pretty well in these big time kind of matchups. We've seen that in a lot of these, whether it's an Auburn against South Carolina, Tennessee getting a revenge against an A&M. But we say that, right? Alabama gets, kind of hold serve at home against Florida in a wild game, but you've also had the instances where South Carolina goes to Tennessee and wins. You've had Kentucky go to Auburn and win. And so, yeah, this is an interesting game, I think, for both teams, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, but we've got a lot to take a look at in terms of the SEC. On Wednesday, we've got a lot of wild games as well. That Tennessee versus Auburn game is one that really does catch my eye because right now, the top-rated team out there in the SEC, it is Tennessee. And for Auburn, I would say that in terms of balance, this might be the best team, but with this Tennessee team, they've got the best player out there on the floor as well, in my opinion. Dalton Connect, who has been connecting for 20 points per contest. Just how do you view this Tennessee versus Auburn game? Because, like I said, if I'm looking at overall balance, I give a slight edge to Auburn, but I don't think that there's much debate as to these two teams being the most balanced teams in the conference. The question is, are these two teams the best two teams in the conference, and which one is better than the other? Because I think that this is just such a good game.
Yeah, I think when you look at these two, we've all kind of maybe even overreacted at times to certain performances from other teams, but these have been the two most complete teams, all season in the SEC. And you said it, just kind of the balance you look at with these two in particular, they've kind of got an interesting matchup here. And, I look at it on both sides, right? Like Auburn has struggled a little bit on the road. Tennessee obviously lost the game at Mississippi State. They lost at A&M. We've seen Auburn kind of against good teams on the road. That's been kind of the theme, right? Is can they go win those games on the road against good teams? And we'll find out in this one because, Greg, this is a tough place to play. And, not many teams have gone in there except for South Carolina and been able to even keep it close against Tennessee at times. And so the thing we talked about with Tennessee is, let's say Auburn comes in and defends really well here. It's kind of the same story, which Tennessee, I think, has done a really good job of answering. Can they have other guys step up around Dalton Connect and help scoring-wise? There's been a little ups and downs with that this season, but when he's as good as he can be, man, it's like even if they don't have somebody step up and score 25 points, right, you've still got a pretty good group of guys around him, whether it's Ziegler, Vescovy, James, and so forth. They do. There are just so many guys that can contribute on that Tennessee team. So good depth on both sides, probably the two deepest teams in the SEC. But again, it's such a challenge to go in there and win and even play well, as we've seen Tennessee really just pick some teams apart there in Knoxville.
Oh, without question. It is such an interesting matchup that we get. And with this Auburn team, they might have the best low post presence in this game as well in G&I Broom. But when Dalton Connect is connecting, it makes it very, very tough on opponents. So very interested to see what we get Wednesday there. As joining me on the show, we do have Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we've been mentioning it. The best bets right now in the SEC thus far have been the home teams, but there's been one team that I feel like has done a really good job on the road, and that is South Carolina. As a matter of fact, they and Tennessee are the only teams with more than 5 road wins thus far this season. Going into Tuesday, Kentucky would be able to get there if they knock off Mississippi State, but now they go on the road and they face a Texas A&M team that, let's be honest here, both of us expected much more out of this Texas A&M team. How do you view this sort of a matchup with a South Carolina team that, yeah, they leave something to be desired on offense, but on defense, I like what I'm seeing. And under the radar, I feel like they might have the most underrated player, not just in this conference, but perhaps in the country, and Colin Murray-Boyles and the support he's been able to give this team in the back half of the season.
Yeah, he definitely has. He's been one of the kind of breakout stars in the SEC. There's no doubt about it. And, everyone felt like going to start earlier in the season, we were like, hey, there's a big four with B.J. Mack, Michie Johnson, Miles Studi, Talon Cooper. But, boy, it's become a big five for this team now with Murray-Boyles and how he's played. I mean, he has been really fantastic. I think 6 straight games in double figures. Of course, had that 31-point game against Vanderbilt in there. He's kind of been the missing piece, I think, to take this team to the level that they are now. When you look at it, I mean, it's like, how do you expect a game like this to play out? I'm not going to give you my betting advice, Greg, but boy, when I see these two teams play offense sometimes and I see the way they can defend, you've got to think that this is going to be one of those SEC rock fights potentially in College Station, where it may be a game too, where you see quite a few free throws, which we usually see from A&M anyways. But you just don't know what you're getting with this A&M team. And that's the thing. Even the frustrations we have at times with South Carolina offensively, they've worked their magic defensively, and they're nowhere near as bad shooting the ball as Texas A&M is. That's why I said it was pretty predictable, I thought, to see the blowout coming for A&M at Tennessee, because the last time they played Tennessee and beat them by 16, A&M had what I thought was easily their best offensive performance of the year. I mean, they hit 11 threes and all this. And we're talking about the team that ranks 360th nationally in three-point percentage, 27.1%. These guys cannot shoot. They can't shoot from two. They're 47% there. That's 302nd nationally. They shoot 69% from the free throw line, 283rd nationally. The only thing offensively that A&M does well consistently is take care of the ball, and as we know, best offensive rebounding team in the country. And so it's such a weird kind of offensive resume that Texas A&M has. And we know they have good players. I mean, Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford are as good as anybody in terms of guard play. But you never know what you're getting with them. And I think South Carolina, as you said, has been way more consistent in terms of how they defend and a little more consistent in terms of how they get baskets. So I really have no clue what to expect in this game. But I think, everybody still kind of feel like at times is doubting South Carolina because they had a bad week against Auburn and LSU. But as you said, they bounced back with a huge win at Ole Miss. Now they go play A&M, who kind of is fighting for an NCAA tournament bid at this point. I mean, they are probably right there on the line after losing 4 straight now. This would be a huge, and this is probably the biggest game of the season for A&M because they don't have any opportunities like this left except for Mississippi State at home the following week. So, yeah, this should be a fun one, although I may use the word fun loosely, Greg, because it may be a low-scoring game where defense reigns supreme here.
Hey, I think it's fun when you can get some of these slobber knockers. I would like to see it perhaps be a little bit higher scoring than what we've seen out of Virginia last few games, not being able to get to 50 in your last 3. Then maybe we found a little bit too far, but you don't need to threaten me with a good time, Blake, as we do have Blake Lovell, who does great work over at Southeastern 14, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And we talk about that game being low scoring. You know whose games are not low scoring? That would be Alabama. They're going to be playing against Ole Miss on Wednesday as well. And this is just such a fascinating game because I was making the jokes on Saturday that Alabama misread the sign Rupp Arena and thought it was the 2024 NBA All-Star game with the way that they were playing defense. Gave up 101 points in 31 minutes, which that's just ghastly. How do you take a look at this matchup with an Alabama team that they have literally been able to get to at least 95 points in all but one of their games this far this month? But as I was alluding to as well, this is also a team that's given up at least 90 in 4 straight as well.
Yeah, I mean, boy, everybody knows I've hyped up Alabama all year long, but you can see kind of the product of the Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky games where it's like you play these 3 good, 3 of the best teams in the SEC on the road, and you give up 91 or more in all those games. And, your offense actually traveled pretty well. Like Kentucky scored 95, traveled okay at Auburn, scored 81. But you just can't give up that many points. And, I've said the thing for Alabama is that they're just going to have to outscore teams. And believe it or not, I know they just gave up 117, but they have shown signs of getting a little bit better defensively. But again, that's usually come against teams that are not as good offensively as the kind of teams they're going to have to beat to make a run in the NCAA tournament. So, like you said at the start, I mean, it's a road game in the SEC. And we've seen Ole Miss get hot this year in terms of their offensive play, but the problem is they kind of haven't recently. You've seen their offense really slow down a little bit. When you look at, them losing 5 of 6 heading into this game, I think they've only scored over 65 points, maybe twice in there, and that was 71 and 77. So it's like, that's not the best thing in those 5 losses. So you wonder, can they be the kind of team offensively that's going to threaten Alabama? Well, if Alabama plays defense the way they did against Kentucky, which give Kentucky a little credit, they hit some tough shots, but also they got a lot of good shots. Ole Miss is going to have a chance to score some points here because remember, too, we've talked about it this year, they're one of the best three-point shooting teams out there as well. They shoot it really well from the free throw line. This is the kind of game Alabama has to win if, they want to prove that they can be a threat in the NCAA tournament, because I think this is the kind of team that they match up well with. So it's a matter of going on the road, proving that you can play enough defense to win, because you're just going to assume you're not going to shoot it as well on the road as you do at home, even though Alabama's kind of defied that logic sometimes because of how many threes they shoot. So this is an interesting game for me because I think we'll learn a lot about Alabama, but you know what? Just like I said with A&M a second ago, Greg, what's the common denominator with them and Ole Miss? They both need good wins. So this is the biggest game of the season for Ole Miss. That place will be rocking, and we'll see if Chris Beard can find some defensive magic that he's worked in the past. He just hasn't necessarily been able to work it with this team just yet.
And I will apologize briefly here to Alabama. I said that they gave up 90-plus in 4 straight games, 3 out of their last 4 games. So we have to give the credit where it is due. As joining me on the show, we do have Blake Lovell, who does such good work over at Southeastern 14, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And certainly on Wednesday, we're going to get some good SEC action. But Blake, I know you do such a good job taking a look at the national landscape of college basketball. So it's always one of my favorite questions to ask you. Who are a few teams that you're taking a look at right now? You can be feeling a little bit more bullish on them. You can be feeling a little bit more bearish on them. But we're a few teams that are really catching your eye, and you're starting to have a little bit of a change of heart on them, whether that be to the positive or the negative.
Well, I think one of the interesting teams out there, Greg, and again, this could change by the week, right? But I guess because they are coming off a big win, and I look at their remaining schedule and I see a lot of opportunity there, and that's Wake Forest. We talk about teams that are right there on that line, and the teams that could get in, the teams that may get in, maybe not. Bracketology-wise, there have been someone that's kind of right there in that same range with a Texas A&M and an Ole Miss. And, again, my opinion on Wake Forest has certainly changed throughout the year because, again, there's been good weeks, there's been bad weeks, but they finally kind of got that big win they were looking for by beating Duke. I'm curious because you and I have always talked about Steve Forbes. Years now. Like, we remember going back, talking about him at ETSU and all of that. He's just someone that is a really, really good basketball coach. And you see kind of what he's done at Wake Forest over the past couple of years, kind of trying to get that program back on solid ground and now being right there with a chance to make the NCAA tournament. I'm curious to see if they can kind of break through and maybe get there. Don't know if they're a team that's going to win multiple games, but I'm at least kind of invested in the story now to see what this Wake Forest team can do here down the stretch. And so very curious to see how that plays out. We always talk about the Mountain West. I feel like every time we do this, and I feel like it's a different team every single time, Greg. I'm looking up and I'm like, which team do you talk about this time? Because we just know how fantastic of a year it's been for this particular conference, and you just kind of look up and see all these different teams and what they can accomplish. I'm really looking forward to, which I know that we've already played before, this goes up, but Nevada's got those 2 big road games. Obviously, Colorado State, that's on Tuesday night, and they got the big road game coming up, I guess, against Boise State. I think that's the following Tuesday. Curious to see, how Steve Alford's team kind of finishes. That's a team I've kind of had my eye on this year. They picked up a couple good wins a few weeks ago when they beat the San Diego State in that overtime game. They won that game at Utah State, have the win over Colorado State. Again, it's the entire conference. I could just use that as my easy answer every time, but I really am just excited to not only see how the Mountain West finishes, who winds up being the conference champion. But you want to talk about a conference tournament this year. I'm more excited about the Mountain West conference tournament than I probably am half of the power conference tournaments, just based on how many different kind of combinations you could get in the semifinals or even in the finals heading into that Mountain West tournament.
The Mountain West is going to be wild and crazy. I totally agree with you there, and I do think that it's going to be a lot of fun to see what we get next few weeks out there. And, man, the loss that New Mexico took a few nights ago, pretty ghastly. When you're a 20-point favorite against Air Force, you do need to get the job done there, so we shall see if they're able to rebound. But this is a man that every single time he's on this podcast, he always gets the job done. W. Blake, you do such good work over at Southeastern 14. It is a hard sport to decipher, but yet you do so all so well. You do a nice job just with all of the work that you do over at Southeastern 14 and other platforms. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you and how they're able to get all that good work over there on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, always appreciate it, Greg. Yeah, check it out there on YouTube. You can find all of our SEC basketball stuff, Southeastern 14, daily stuff going up, usually multiple things per day. So you can find us there and everything else on Twitter at @BlakeLovell.
And Blake does an amazing job taking a look at this tremendous game that we all know and love of college basketball. Every single time he joins the show, he lends such good insight, and it's always a pleasure to get him aboard. Big thanks to Blake for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the Beast and Family podcast. And coming up next, it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Wednesday as we hit some bank shots. back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Blake Lovell, who does such good work over at Southeastern 14. It sure is a fascinating conference out there in the southeastern part of the country. Every single time Blake joins this show, lends good insights and does more than just the SEC as well. He does a great job just all across college basketball, and it's always a pleasure to get him aboard. Big thanks to Blake for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Wednesday, as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at unit_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the bigger conferences up top. Those are going to be the games with 3 digits, and then the games with 6 digits. Those involve the smaller conferences. Those are going to be at the bottom, and the conferences that are going to be featured at the bottom are the Patriot League, the Big South, the Atlantic Sun. If you have any NEC action, that's going to be down there. The Southland is there as well, and I believe we have got all the ones that we're going to be seeing at the bottom today. So how about if we get things started with 667, 668 on the betting board? It is VCU, and they're playing us for Rhode Island. Rhode Island is an underdog of 12.5 to 13 points. So tonight's game is 142.5 to 143. Set my line at 12.5. 13 is my buy point on Rhode Island, and this is a grody Rhode Island team. They are in the bottom 15 nationally in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, and so much of it just goes to the fact that they don't generate turnovers. In a roadside shooting court venue, they're a bottom 10 team in all of college basketball being able to generate turnovers, but this team has been a little bit more respectable ever since they've gotten David Green in the fold. He's been able to give the team 14 points, 4 boards, missed the first, I would say, 12 or 13 games of the season, and ever since his rival, it's been a little bit better. And Rhode Island, they're a halfway decent team with their rebound rate. Out of their top 5 scorers, all but one of them, and Jaden House is their top scorer with 15 points per contest. Give you at least 3.5 boards per contest. David Fuchs has been able to give you about 7 boards per game. And it's a Rhode Island team that they do shoot 36% from 3. They also do shoot 64% at the free throw line. And they go up against a VCU team that they just lock you down from distance. A top 25 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And overall, this has been a VCU team that's been a little bit surprising in that I thought they'd be a little bit better on offense and a little bit worse on defense with Mr. Ryan Odom coming over from Utah State. But this VCU bunch, 54th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but only giving up about 2.5 points less per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shooting court venue. But Joe Besmele, he's been able to do a solid job shooting about 40.5% from 3-point range. He's really been able to come on strong recently. 13 plus points in 4 of the last 5 games. Max Shulga has been the main concept for this team. 14.5 points, 3.5 assists, shoots north of 40% from 3 in his own right. And now you've got Zeb Jackson back to full, someone who is able to give this team about 3.5 assists, a little bit over a steal per contest. And for VCU, it is a top 75 team with regards to their rebound rate, despite the fact that they don't necessarily have a lot of dominance down low. Tabu Lau has been able to come over from the country of England. He's been able to do a solid job, giving you about 6 rebounds per contest. You've got Kune, who's been able to give you a little bit on the interior, but he's more of a stretch big man that's able to pop it from 3-point range. But I do think that with Rhode Island, they're going to be able to do a good enough job of being able to protect the ball, and I do think that Rhode Island certainly going to get romped in this one. This has been a defense that has now given up at least 77 points each of their last 4 games, but do have a VCU team that as well has been having their difficulties being able to put the ball in the basket. They themselves give it up at least 69 points in each of the last 3 games, but VCU well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions, wearing Rhode Island, not necessarily running it and gunning it either. So I did sell my total 142.5 here at the 143, diving under, and 13 or more going to be one thing to points with Rhode Island. 669, 670 on the betting board. Florida plays host to Missouri. Missouri is a underdog of 13 points, seeing 13.5 out there as well. Totals between 153.5 and 154.5. It's up by total 155.5. I'm going to be looking at the over. Now, Missouri has been rough with their offense, scoring fewer than 66 points in 5 out of their last 7 games, so that's been a little bit brutal. And this despite the fact that got a pair of guys in Sean East along Tamar Bates, who combined for about 30 points per contest between the two of them. They are shooting both north of 40% from 3-point range, but really nobody else is providing you a lot. Of Missouri is outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. That's an issue when you go up against a Florida team that is a top 15 team in all of college basketball in terms of their rebound rate. Now, it's a Florida team that isn't necessarily too amazing in terms of being able to pop the three. 33.5% to 34% is what they're shooting from three-point range. Riley Kugel is a good NBA prospect, but just has not been able to put it together all season long. He's been sort of stuck on supplying the team with about 11 points per contest. I do like what they're able to get down low, though. I was mentioning their rebound rate and how good it is. You've got a trio of guys that all give you at least 6.5 rebounds per game. Terry Samuel, Micah Hanglon, Alex Condon, who should be able to dominate this game down low against a Missouri team that right now you don't have anyone that's giving you north of 5.2 rebounds per game, and that would be Noah Carter, who's been able to do that for Florida. They have been able to cut down on the turnovers a little bit as well. Zion Pullen is giving you 5 assists, 1.2 turnovers a game, while shooting 40% from 3. He's really the lone of their top scorers that's able to shoot above 33% from 3, since Walter Clayton, who's been able to come on a little bit strong recently, but I just think that Missouri is going to get overwhelmed in this one. For Missouri, they have just been stuck in general, and I undersold them a little bit. I was saying 65 points or fewer. It's 67 points or fewer, but still, this has been a pretty rough offense, and the defense has given up 75 plus in 4 of their last 5 games, going up against a Florida team that is just absolutely gunning it. They're a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. They've gotten past the 73-point barrier in all of their last 5 games, and for Florida, this has been a bunch that has been held below 73 points just twice since the turn of the new year, and has been held below 70 points just 2 times since the beginning of the month of December. So I don't think that there's going to be a lot of denying this Florida team, with Missouri just a rudderless bunch that is still creating a few turnover opportunities, but they're going to be outgunned from the perimeter as well. Florida at home is allowing opponents to shoot just 28.3% from three-point range. Meanwhile, Missouri, in a roadside shoot car venue, they allow opponents to shoot 35.6% from the outside. So I did set my line at 13.5. I'm willing to lay 13 with Florida, and did set my total at a 155.5. Missouri getting bludgeoned on defense outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and Florida gunning it on offense. So looking at the over end, looking at Florida laying the number. 671, 672 on the betting board. Detroit, it's the road face-off against Youngstown St. The Penguins are a 19-point favorite, and your total on this game is 151.5. We have to go against the Penguins in this one. I set my line at 18. This has just gotten a little bit too far in my opinion. It's a Detroit team that stinks, but at the same time, with Detroit, at the very least, you're still getting somewhat of an effort out of Jaden Stone, who's done a nice job supplying the team with about 21 points per contest. It's a Youngstown State team that also, very strangely, they're allowing fewer points per possession when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. They're a top 125 team in all of college basketball at that regard, but they are really giving it up from three-point range at home, allowing opponents to shoot 40% from 3 at home compared to 29.6% in a roadside shoot-your-car venue. That really doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, but it's been what it's been this far this season. You've got Marcus Tankersley for this Detroit team, also supply about 16.5 points per contest. Now, Detroit going to get romped on the glass. You've got Eduardo Del Cadillo, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game, but that's how you really don't have anyone else on the roster other than Stone that's able to give you north of 4 boards per contest. Meanwhile, for Youngstown State, you've got DJ Turner Burns along with Ziggy Reed, who have been very good as versatile big men. They combine for 28 points. Burns is able to give you 10.5 boards, 2.5 assists on 32% three-point shooting. Reed shoots 38.5% from the outside. And if this were more of a nip-and-tuck game, Youngstown State, big advantage here. They shoot 77.7% at the free throw line, top 30 mark in all of college basketball. Each of their top 4 scorers shoot at least 81% of the charity stripe as well. You've got Brett Thompson, who's able to give you 4 assists, 13 points. The three-point shooting after Reed and Burns does take a little bit of a nosedive, but all in all, I do take a look at Youngstown State, and yeah, they are by far the better team in this circumstance. They're not really winning by margin too much, and it has been a Youngstown State team that has been giving it up a little bit recently themselves. They have given up at least 77 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that you're going to be able to get points up on the board. It's a Detroit team that has been getting just absolutely romped on defense. I mean, this bunch have given up at least 75 points in all but one of their games this far this month. Youngstown State, the last time they played them, put up 105 points. I do think that Youngstown State is not going to duplicate the 14 of 26 three-point shooting and 15 of 15 free throw shooting expose that they put on last time, but I do think the points are going to be scored. Set my total 154, so looking at the over, but did set my line at 18. Youngstown State wins this game convincingly, but I think we went a little bit too far. Taking the 19 with Detroit and the over. 673, 674 on the betting board. It is Old Dominion on the road facing up against Appalachian St, and App State is a favorite of 15 points. Your total on this game, you're going to be getting it anywhere between 143 to a 143.5. Seeing a 15.5 out there as well. And at 15.5, that is my buy point on Old Dominion. Old Dominion, their coach and Jeff Jones, who's been out due to health issues all season long, retired, so perhaps this is going to be a win-one for the Gipper sort of situation. I doubt it, but I'm going to try to make it a win-one for the Gipper sort of situation. But Old Dominion, as Wright, lost a few guys by the transfer portal. Dereco Williams, who was supposed to be one of their top rebounders, is gone. Vashawn Alouette, who was their top scorer, he decided to leave at the end of January, so now you're looking at the show of Chauncey Jenkins along Tyrone Williams. And to the credit of Tyrone Williams, with Alouette out of the fold, this guy has actually been really good. He has now been able to supply the team with at least 11 points in all but one of the team's last 8 games. You've got Chauncey Jenkins alongside of him, giving you 2.5 assists, 16 points for a team that they don't turn the ball over all like flat. 10.9 turnovers per game, considering they're a relatively mid-tempo team. That's good. Where Old Dominion is just getting crushes on defense. So Old Dominion in a roadside Chicago venue is allowing opponents to shoot 37.8% from three-point range. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of their rebound rate as well. Although I will say, they have been able to generate a few turnovers as well. That's something that Appalachian State doesn't necessarily have a specialty with. Appalachian State, a top 35 team in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're doing it much more down low with someone like a Justin Abson, who's been able to give you 2.5 blocks per contest. You've got Trevon Spillers, who's able to give you 13 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, and then Donovan Gregory shoots starting near 40% from three-point range, but not a guy that's going to be going out there and necessarily putting on a absolute expose with regards to his overall scoring. And this is an Appalachian State team that, to their credit, they only turned the ball over about 11 times per contest. Old Dominion being 92nd in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis might not help them out overly much here, but for Appalachian State, they've been able to do a rock solid job on defense all season long. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot just 30.6% from three-point range, but with this Appalachian State team, you do have to have a little bit of fear that they shoot less than 32.5% from three. They do shoot less than 70% at the free throw line as well, which I do think that could be the difference between them covering and not. Miles State, he's been able to do a nice job being able to dole out the ball, and for Appalachian State, I mean, the defense just continues to be very rock solid. 67 points of fear surrendered 3 of their last 4 games. Last time these two teams played, it was 82-67 on a day where Appalachian State shot 9 of 18 from three-point range. I think that gets bogged down a little bit. I do still think that you get some points up on the board, semi-total 143, so 143.5 begins to be my buy point on the under with Appalachian State. Made them a 15-point favorite. I think it's very similar to what we saw last time around, so at 15.5 or more, take the points with Old Dominion and the under. 675, 676 on the betting board. James Madison, it's road face-off against Georgia State, and Georgia State is an underdog of 8.5 to 9 points. So on this game, it is 152.5. With James Madison, I made them a 9.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. James Madison, a top 25 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, they go up against a Georgia State team that has been very spectacular in the way that they've been able to guard the three-point arc. Georgia State, 10th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. That goes all the way down to 25.5% at home. But James Madison, their defense travels. They're a top 20 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis in a roadside shooter venue. They are number 2 in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. I will say for Georgia State, I like the versatility of DeJuan Odom, 5 boards, 4.5 assists, 12 points per contest while shooting 46% from three-point range, but outside of him, there's really nobody else that sees meaningful minutes that shoots above 34% from three-point range. And for James Madison, you got essentially an 8 to 9 man rotation with a whole lot of guys that are able to step up in a big way. TJ Bickerstaff is able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. Now, I will say, on the flip side, you do have someone that comes in from Queens NC and Jaden Turner, who's also been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. That helps out Georgia State quite a bit, but for Georgia State, other than him, you're not really getting a lot down low. So James Madison, I think they should be able to do a good job winning the battle on the glass. This is a James Madison bunch that is now clocking in the top 85 with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, Georgia State, they continue to be well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, for James Madison as well, they do a nice job of being able to protect the ball, and they've got a pair of guys that give you north of 3 assists per contest. Michael Green coupled with Terrence Edwards have been able to combine for about 6.7 assists per contest. Edwards is your main scorer, shooting about 37% from 3, 17.5 points per contest for a unit that has now 7 different guys that give you at least 6.9 points per contest. It's been a really, really just good holds greater than some of its parts sort of unit, and with James Madison, they're in the top 30 in terms of total possessions per game, yet they only turn the ball over 11 times per contest. So James Madison bunch has been able to get past the 80-point plateau in each of their last 4 games, going up against a Georgia State team that has had their struggles on offense. They have scored 72 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. For Georgia State, it's been a little bit touch and go for them. They're about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so I did set my total at a 153.5. Here at the 152.5, I'm going to be one go over because I do think that James Madison going to be able to put up their 80. And despite the fact that Georgia State has been really good at being able to lock down from the perimeter, on the inside, it's not necessarily been so great. That's why if you take a look at just raw points allowed on a per possession basis, this is a Georgia State team that's clocking in well outside the top 150. So a circumstance where I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and I'm going to lay James Madison, 677, 678 on the betting board. Wright State hope to be the right side as they play us to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne is a underdog of 5 points. Your total on this game, it is 168 to 168.5, and I did set my total 164.5. I'm going to be looking at the under. For Fort Wayne, this team has actually done a really good job of generating turnovers. A top 25 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Well, they themselves do a very nice job being able to protect the ball. They only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, considering they're a top 45 team in terms of total possessions. Brain, that's actually relatively impressive, as you've got Quentin Morton-Robinson, Jalen Jackson, combined for 29.6 points per contest, both shoot north of 40% from three. And Fort Wayne does shoot about 36% from three-point range. They go up against a Wright State team that has been awful in terms of defense. They are well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. For Wright State, they have not gotten right with their defense all season long, as in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, 344th in all of college basketball, allowing opponents to shoot 41.6% from three-point range. I think there should be a little bit of positivity that comes through, but for Wright State, where they're going to be able to dominate this game is down low. Fort Wayne is a bunch that is well outside the top 225 with regards to the rebound rate. Eric Mulder has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. That is about it, though I do like Rasheed Bello. Not someone that's going to shoot a ball from three-point range, but comes in from G2 UW Parkside, 15.5 points, 4 assists, 2 steals per contest. But for Wright State, this bunch has been able to do a nice job in the glass. They're about 105th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got Alex Huber-Gerste along with Brandon Noel, who have been able to do a nice job on that front, with Noel being your main rebounder, 14.5 points, 8 boards, shoots 42.5% from three-point range. And Huber-Gerste has been able to shoot about 40% from the outside himself. But it's all about Trey Calvin, Tanner Olden. These guys can give you a combined 35.7 points, 7.5 assists, 3.3 steals, and Olden, he chips in there 6.5 boards, while Calvin shoots 42% from three-point range. Wright State has been a heat-seeking missile with regards to their offense. They're a top 35 team in three-point shooting percentage, and in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, this has been one of your most efficient offenses in all of college basketball, ranking in the top 75 with that regard. But you also do go up against a Fort Wayne team that, while they aren't quite as efficient on offense as this Wright State team, they've been able to do a relatively solid job themselves, and they only experience a drop-off of about 1.1 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. Meanwhile, Wright State, they only see a bump of about 2.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. I do think that Fort Wayne, a team that is in the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, is going to do just enough to be able to hold in this game. And for Fort Wayne, I do think that their three-point shooting defense, allowing opponents to shoot 32.7% from three, 115th in the country, does just enough to be able to hold this total under, even though both of these teams in the top 70 with regards to total possessions. Graves set my total 164.5, diving under, and with Fort Wayne, made them a 4.5 point underdog, so won't take 5 with them. 679, 680 on the betting board. Western Carolina is going to be playing us to Furman. Furman is a underdog of 3 points. Your total on this game, it is 148.5, seeing a stray 149 out there as well. And 149 is my buy point on the under, and 149 is the opener that we saw. Western Carolina has been bumping up their tempo a little bit. Now they're clocking in about 200th in the country with regards to total possessions. While Furman, they've been slowing down a little bit more. They're still fast, but they're not out of control fast. But I do like the way that Western Carolina has been able to play on defense. They do give it up a little bit from three-point range. 193rd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they've done a really good job on the interior, and you've got by far the best player out there on the floor in Vontavious Wilbright. 21 points, 12 boards, 4+ assists, a block, a steal per game. This guy does it all for Western Carolina as well. They do average 10.1 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. Meanwhile, you do have a Furman team that they see a drop-off of 9.9 points per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. And for Furman, a little bit of work credit is due. The defense isn't quite as ghastly as it was towards the beginning part of the season, but still clocking in about 195th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Marcus Foster has been just so paramount in terms of being able to get things turned around. He has been the main guy for this Furman team, and legitimately the only player that is currently healthy is able to give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game, so they're going to be leaning on him and his 19.5 points per game quite a bit. But it is a Furman team that's touch and go from three-point range. Mr. Foster only shoots about 33% from distance himself, the team as a whole, they do shoot about 32.5% from the outside, and their top 3-point shooter, and Alex Williams, he has been in and out of the fold. Was able to return in that last game against Wofford, but only played 11 minutes, so have to figure that he's not going to be 100% this one. JP Peaks, 4.5 assists per game, but Furman has been turning the ball over nearly 12.5 times per contest, going against the Western Carolina team that is not going to generate a lot of turnovers, but they do have a really good core in terms of just locking you down defensively, playing good man-to-man defense, and outside of Woolbright, you got a trio of guys, and Trey Jackson, DJ Turn It Up Campbell, along with Russell Jones, that all combined to be able to give you about 40 points per contest. All three guys give between 12 and 13.4 points per contest. Jones and Campbell both shoot above 41% from three-point range. Jackson throws in there a steal and 36% three-point shooting. In Western Carolina, at the end of games, they just do the little things. Each of their top 6 scorers shoot at least 71.9% at the free throw line. Western Carolina only turns the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. Really like what I've been seeing out of this unit. They've now given up 71 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. And some credit to this Furman defense. They have actually given up 67 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Lone exception is giving up 74 to Sam Amford. So I do think that things get bogged down a little bit with this total at a 149 or higher. I'm going to be taking a look at the under, but like the current form of Western Carolina, set them as a 4.5 point favorite. So landing with Western Carolina and taking a look at the under. 681, 682 on the betting board. It is North Texas, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Tulane, and Tulane is a underdog of a 1.5 total on this game. It is between 138.5 and 139, and with North Texas, I did set them as a favorite of 1.5 points. So we are going to be awaiting a little bit of line movement here. We were seeing a little bit earlier on that we were getting some different numbers with a North Texas team that is in the bottom 20 nationally with regards to total possessions per game. They may not have Grant McCaslin anymore, but they still have that very slow, very grimy approach, and they're legitimately a top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and all season long they have been able to do a nice job of being able to stick teams in the mud. So if we could get down to more like a pick 'em to a 1-point line, I'd be willing to lay it with them. You've got on the flip side a bunch in Tulane that it's a very top heavy team, and you've got some really nice players for this team. Like, I absolutely love what Kevin Cross is able to bring to the table. He's able to give you 18 plus points. He's able to throw in there about like 7 or so rebounds per game, 4.5 assists. One of the best stat sheets ever say you're going to find in all of college basketball for a Tulane team that they shoot about 35.5% from 3. Where they're really going to be exposed, though, is on the glass. Tulane is outside the top 320 in terms of their rebound rate. Meanwhile, North Texas, they're more around 121st with Mule Sissoko, who was really able to emerge towards the NIT last season, doing a nice job down low. He only gives you about 3.5 points per contest, but throws in there about 4.5 boards per contest. Meanwhile, for North Texas, you've got 2 top flight scorers in Jason Edwards along with Aaron Scott, who have been able to combine for about 30.5 points per contest. Edwards is able to shoot 37% from 3. Scott shoots about 40% from the outside for a North Texas team that overall they are shooting about 37% from 3-point range. They're not a completely inefficient offense, even though they do play super duper slowly. You'd think from the 67.2 points per contest, it's a little bit rough, but for North Texas, I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job holding up on defense, even against the most up-tempo of teams. They're really not allowing much more than 71 points, as other than that overtime game that they played against UAB. So if you're looking at regulation and regulation only, that is really the only game since the beginning of the month of December that they have given up north of 71 points. Meanwhile, it is a Tulane bunch that they have scored fewer than 70 points in each of their last 2 games. You do have some guys that are able to throw it in there from 3-point range, like you've got Zion James shooting 39% from 3, giving you 14 points, 5 boards per contest, but I do think that North Texas is going to be able to win from within. I do think that North Texas does a relatively solid job of being able to slow this game down, but because I do think that it's going to be relatively tight, since Tulane has an advantage in the backcourt, North Texas more in the front court, I do think that this is going to be nip and tuck, going to come down to some late game fouling of both of these teams, shoot it well at the free throw line. So I did set my total 139.5, here 138.5, 139, going to be looking at the over. North Texas willing to lay up to a point with them, set them as a 1.5 point favorite. 683, 684 on the betting board. Robert Morris plays us in Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky is a favorite of 2 points. Your total on this game, it is 142, and with North Texas, I also did set them as a 2-point favorite, so we're going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement here. Saw a little bit before a 1.5 pop up, and that would be my buy point on a Northern Kentucky team that has done a really nice job, despite the fact that they had a big loss towards the beginning of conference play. They did lose Sam Vincent, who was really a do-it-all player. He was able to give you 2.5 steals, 5 boards, 13.5 points per contest, but Northern Kentucky, despite being well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, they have found a way to be able to mix and match. They're a top 45 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers force on a per-possession basis. Not a heat-seeking missile with their 3-point shooting whatsoever, but you do now have a 40% 3-point shooter in LJ Wells, who's been able to play Wells, giving you 9 points, about 4.5 rebounds per game, so really like the way that he's been able to emerge, as He's been able to supply the team with double figures in each of the team's last 5 games with 6+ rebounds in every one of them. So that has been absolutely massive. And they go up against a Robert Morris team that is in the bottom 75 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, turning it over 13.5 times per contest. Do have Marquise Hastings, say we give you 8 boards, 15 points per game for a Robert Morris team that they're not amazing on the glass, but they're going to have a little bit of advantage with regards to their rebound rate, especially when you throw in their Stephon Walker, who's been able to give you 10.5 points, 6.5 boards per game. But other than Hastings, who shoots 39.5% from 3, don't have a ton from the outside. This team shoots about 33.4% from 3-point range, and they go up against a Northern Kentucky team that does an amazing job of locking you down from the perimeter. Northern Kentucky 24th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while Robert Morris more on 197th. I will say for Robert Morris, opponents shoot about 32.5% for 3-point range at home against them, more like 35.7% in a road/court venue. And I do like TJ Wainwright when he's able to bring to Robert Morris with about 10 points per contest, help out a backcourt that includes Justice Williams, who I thought coming in from LSU he was going to be great. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points, 2.5 assists, but turns the ball over 2.5 times per contest, has not really panned out the way that I was expecting him to. And for Northern Kentucky, all of a sudden, this team has been able to get it going on offense. 72+ points in 4 out of their last 5 games. Defense has remained relatively sturdy. They've given up 73 or fewer in pretty much every single one of their games this month. Sans that strange overtime game that we saw against Oakland, and any game involving Wright State is just going to have a bunch of points in general. Meanwhile, you've got a Robert Morris team that has been able to do 71 points or fewer for the last 5 games. So, intriguing circumstance here. I did set my total at a 142. I was seeing a few 142.5s a little bit earlier, and the 142s I'm seeing right now do have some juice on the over. So, at a 142.5 or higher, I'm going to be looking at the under. And with Northern Kentucky, set them as a 2-point favorite, willing to lay up to 1.5 with them. 685, 686 on the betting board. The Citadel is going to be playing against East Tennessee State. East Tennessee State is an underdog of 1.5. Total on this game, getting it at a 134.5. I said ETSU as the 1.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be looking at ETSU outright on the money line for the Citadel. This has not been a bad defense in terms of being able to hit the glass, being able to avoid second chances, but they're now outside the top 210 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It has not been too terrific for them recently. You do have Quentin Ballora Brown, who is going to be the top rebounder in this game. He's been able to supply about 9.5 rebounds per game for the Citadel, but in terms of the overall depth and in terms of the overall front court, that does belong to ETSU. You've got a trio of guys that I'll give you at least 6.3 rebounds per game, as Karen Boyd, along with Jaden Seymour, Jaden Parker, they're all able to combine for in that neighborhood about 20.5 rebounds per game. And then A.B. Asamoah, who comes in from Delaware, 15 points, 4 boards, shoots 34.5% from 3. Now for ETSU, they only shoot 29.8% from 3-point range. That is a bottom 40 mark in all of college basketball. And they do go up against a Citadel team that has been able to do an okay job in terms of being able to play good, strong man-to-man defense. But this Citadel team, they are going to let up a few outside shots as well. They're 234th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while they themselves do have a pair of guards that you do like in the backcourt. You've been able to have Michael Dewar be able to do a relatively solid job. He's been able to supply the team within that neighborhood about 11.5 points per contest. For Dewar, not too much of a 3-point shooter, while Elijah Morgan, A.J. Smith, these two guys, they combine for about 31 points per contest. Smith shoots 36.5% for 3. Morgan is able to shoot 40.5% for 3. And in a nip-and-tuck game, Smith, Morgan, Dewar, they all shoot at least 79.5% at the charity stripe, but there's a lot of top heaviness with this team. Winston Hill has been out for pretty much the entirety of this calendar year. He was someone that was really supplying for this Citadel team down low. And ever since he's been out of the fold, it does feel like things have gone very much awry with this defense. And the offense, it has been all over the place for the Citadel. In their last 5 games, they have scored 64, 61, 76, 78, and 71 points. Meanwhile, you got an ETSU team that they themselves have now allowed at least 69 points in each of their last 5 games. But both of these teams are well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game. ETSU, I do believe, is going to be able to do a little bit of a better job guarding from the outside. 239th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but outside of your big 2 with the Citadel, you don't have a lot from the outside. So I did set my total 133.5. I'm diving under with ETSU. I do think that they win from within. I'm looking at ETSU on the money line to go along with the under. 687, 688 on the betting board. Duquesne, they play us a little Salle. Salle is exploring a cover as an underdog of 8.5 points. Total on this game is 141.5, and I did set my total at 142.5. I am going to be taking a look at the over, and this was an opener of 9.5. If we can get back there, I'd be willing to take the points with LaSalle, as it's a Duquesne team that, while they've been able to do a nice job with their defense, they're back in the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have to have your trepidation with the Duquesne team that legitimately has two guys that are able to average north of 8 points per game. You've had two guys in Jimmy Clark along with Day Grant who have been amazing. They've been able to supply you with about 32 points per contest. Where's everyone else, though? You've got Fusani Drame be able to do an okay job of supplying about 5.5 boards per contest, but other than him shooting 46.5% from three, there's not a lot of outside pop, and for LaSalle, it has been rough for the team. They're outside the top 250 in terms of both points allowed on a per possession basis and opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and they're about 300th with regards to rebound rate, despite the fact that you've got a trio of guys, Rockets Josias, Deshaun Shepard, Khalil Brantley, that all give you at least 5 rebounds per game, but with Brantley along with Jamari Brinkis, these two guys have been able to combine for about 29.5 points and 3 steals per contest, while Brinkis does shoot 41.5% from 3 for the LaSalle team. That's in the top 35 nationally with regards to just fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They commit 9.7 turnovers per game. You got Anwar Gill be a little bit in and out of the fold here in recent weeks, but he's not fully back in the fold. He's given the team 7+ points in each of the last 4 games. He's just actually suffered 9.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, a little bit over a steal per contest, and now you've got some outside shooting pop with Andres Marrero, who's been able to shoot 39.5% from distance. He's been able to supply the team with 8 points per game, though he's been a little bit banged up recently as well. Did miss the team's last game. I'm sort of thinking that he's probably going to be out of the fold for this one, but for Duquesne, again, where are you going to be able to get the ancillary scoring from? It is a Duquesne team that has been all over the place with regards to their offense. He's 7 points or fewer, scored in 3 of their last 4 games, and we've seen a little bit of a heartbeat from this LaSalle defense, giving up 71 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games. It is a LaSalle team I still have trepidation with, but at the opener of 9.5, I'm willing to take those points, and with regards to this total, I personally did set mine more around a 142.5. Duquesne has been able to do a relatively solid job on defense. LaSalle is not, but I do think that LaSalle could be able to find a little bit of offense. I do think that this potentially could be close enough for late game felling. So did set my total 142.5, one at the over and the points with LaSalle. 689, 690 on the betting board. VMI, it's a road face-off against UNC Greensboro. And Greensboro, a favorite of 22 points. And your total on this game, it is between 150 and 150.5. I did set VMI as an underdog of 21.5 points. Need all 22 to be able to take a shot here, but we're willing to take the 22. And this VMI team is gross. They are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They have just been giving up 3 after 3 after 3. That said, you do have a few nice pieces for this team. You've been able to have Deshaun Jackson supply you with about 10.5 rebounds per game. In the backcourt, it's been Brendan Watkins who has been your main man, being able to give you about 13 points, 3 assists per contest, and they go up against a Greensboro team that is outside the top 160 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now with Greensboro, they have been hot from 3 all season long, shooting 39.5% from distance. Each other top 3 scorers, Donovan Atwell, Mikael Brown-Jones, along with Keyshawn Langley, they're all able to shoot at least 41.2% from 3-point range. Keyshawn and his brother Kobe have really done a nice job at the backcourt, as Kobe does a little bit more of the dirty stuff. 6 assists, 2 steals, 9 points per contest while shooting 36.5% from distance himself. And for Greensboro, they do only turn the ball over about 10.8 times per contest, so they've been able to do a solid job with that regard. They go up against a VMI team that, despite the fact that they've got Jackson down low, supplying 10.5 rebounds per game, they are well outside the top 230 with regards to rebound rate and VMI. I mean, the defense is just all sorts of awful, but for UNC Greensboro, they are well outside the top 150 with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage as well, so that'll leave them open for a few open threes. Greensboro, very strangely, is actually giving up a half a point less per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, but you can tell that being away from home, it does affect their outside shooting just a little bit. They're averaging about 6.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, though Mikael Brown-Jones, it just feels like he's bulletproof. 19.5 points, 7.5 boards in a roadside church court venue, shoots about 42% from 3-point range, so he's been rock solid no matter where he's been. At home, he has been able to shoot more like 43% from 3-point range, so I mean, all in all, it is a Greensboro team that they don't necessarily have demonstrative home and road splits, and for VMI, they haven't done their part with regards to totals recently. They have scored 63 points or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games, so it is a situation of something's got to give, and Greensboro has been better on defense recently, giving up 65 or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. I think we've went a little bit too far here. I do think that VMI, who's actually giving up a better 3-point shooting percentage on the road rather than at home, they do just enough to hold in there. Set my line at a 21.5. I'm willing to take 22 here, and with the improved UNC Greensboro defense, Set my total 149.5. Looking at the under and the points with VMI, 691, 692 on the betting board. Marshall, they throw their facing up against Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern is a favorite of a point to a point and a half. This opened up as a pickup total on this game. It is 154.5. I did set my total 154, so I'm going to be looking at the under. But that said, with Marshall, I did set them as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright. It has been a gross year for Marshall, to say the least. The offense has been non-existent. They are well outside the top 225 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis, but they get to go up against a Georgia Southern team as well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and Georgia Southern's absolutely getting cooked from the outside, allowing opponents at home to shoot 36+% from three-point range against them. Now, for Georgia Southern, the good news is you've got Tyron Moore back in the fold. He has been in and out and dealing with injuries throughout the entirety of the season, but he has been the main constant for this team, 15.5 points, shooting 40% from three. And Georgia Southern, in their own right, they do shoot about 34.5% from three-point range, and they do go up against a Marshall unit that they can be a little bit spotty with regards to their defense. For this Marshall unit, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they are 287th in all of college basketball, but actually allowing opponents to shoot more like 34.5% from distance away from them. This balloons past 36% when they are at home, and Marshall is going to be having to rely upon just versatility in general in this game, as Marshall is about 182nd in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. But down low, you got Obiana Onchile-Killian, who's been able to do a solid job with 16 points, 6+ rebounds per game, and Nate Martin has been able to supply about 9 rebounds per game as well. That has really been a little bit of a bread and butter piece for this Marshall team, that with regards to their rebound rate, they've been clocking in more in the neighborhood about 180th in all of college basketball. And for Georgia Southern, they don't have anyone on the roster that really gives you north of 5.2 rebounds per game. They had Carlos Curry last year, who was rock solid, hasn't really played much this season. 319th in the country is Georgia Southern in terms of their rebound rate, with Devontae Parker leading the way with about 5 rebounds per game. You do have Eugene Brown giving you about 10 points, 5 rebounds on a mid-30s three-point shooting percentage, but even though Marshall can be a little bit spotty with regards to their three-point shooting defense, I do think that they're going to be able to do a solid job in this ordeal. It's been a Marshall defense that's been okay recently. 74 points of fear surrendered in 3 of their last 4 games, the one exception game against James Madison. Offense has been brutal. They have scored 67 points of fear in each of their last 5 games, but this is a Marshall team that still ranks in the top 40 with regards to total possessions per game, and now they get to go up against a Georgia Southern defense that has allowed at least 76 points in every single game thus far this month, so it is a little bit of a scenario of something's got to give. Last time these two teams played, Marshall got the job done 79-74, and I do think that Marshall going to be able to get it done once again with their improved rebounding. So did set Marshall as a 2-point favorite, looking at them outright on the money line, and did set my total at a 154, so we're going to be taking Marshall outright on the money line with this total at 154.5, diving under 693, 694 on the betting board. Chattanooga is going to be playing us Mercer, and Mercer does find themselves as an underdog of 8 points total on this game, between 144.5 and 145. Not willing to lay anything more than 8, but I am willing to lay 8 with Chattanooga. This Chattanooga backcourt I really like, as you've got Trey Bonham along with Hunter Huff, pair of guys that combine to shoot north of 40% from three-point range. Between these two guys, you're getting 15+ points apiece out of them, and then you're able to couple that with the best low post player in this game, Sam Alexis. Alexis has been able to do a good job supplying the team with a double-figure amount of points, 9 rebounds per game for a Mercer team that does not have a single guy on the roster. It's able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. Now, we'll say they've been able to do a halfway decent job of being able to persevere despite that. It's not like it's a Chattanooga team that's amazing on the glass. Chattanooga 115th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Mercer more around 210th, and that's just a problem with Mercer. Everything for them is like so-so. They don't have a real main facilitator. Chuck Quiones, who's been giving you 2.2 assists per contest, leads the way. I like Jalen McCreary. He's able to give you about 16 points, a block, a steal, 4.5 rebounds per game. But I mean, it's just one of those collectives in which it's just sort of rudderless. It's sort of out there. Robbie Carpety has been able to give you about 8 points, shoots it well from 3, but he's been off and on injured. He played his first real action since January, a few days ago against UNC Greensboro. Did have 19 points, but he's been a little bit all over the place. You've got a pair of guys that are able to shoot about 40% from three-point range that both give you 9.5 points per contest in Jake Davis along with David Thomas. Thomas has been able to also give you about 2.1 assists per contest in Mercer. They're not bad at taking care of the ball, about 11.5 turnovers per game. That's right around where Chattanooga is, and Chattanooga from time to time will leave themselves open to giving up some open threes, but you're able to say the very same thing about Mercer. Mercer is right around about just outside the top 200 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. Once again, they're about 210th in the country with regards to their rebound rate. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they're about 274th. There's just nothing that they really do well, and they do have that 3-point shooting percentage for opponents expand to 36.5% in a roadside court venue. Chattanooga has been all the more efficient when they've been at home, as they themselves allow opponents to shoot 36% from 3 away from home. That lowers to about 33.9% at home. And with Chattanooga, I do think that they're going to be efficient enough to be able to get the job done. I set my line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay the 8 in. Did set my total 142. Both of these teams well outside the top 175 in terms of total possessions per game. And for this Mercer unit, they have to go up against the Chattanooga squad that has now given up 71 points or fewer for their last 5 games. I think that they're going to be able to hold them down here. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Chattanooga. 695, 696 is the DK Network right to pick. Maryland is going to be playing us in Northwestern. This opened up at a 3.5, and I wrote this up when it was at 3.5. This is getting steamed to high noon as I do this. This is now between 5 and 5.5 with Northwestern laying it. Total on this game is there between 128.5 and 129. 5.5 is the absolute max I'd be willing to lay. And I would say if you have yet to take this one, circumstance where you probably want to see what we get overnight, like perhaps we'll be able to get some news that makes it a little bit more convincing that, yeah, Northwestern should be north of a 5.5 point underdog. But I thought we had good value at 3.5, wrote it up, posted it up, gave it out on the old Greg Peterson experience, and literally minutes after I gave it out, it got steamed up. So like I said, still at a 5.5, it's a max I'd be willing to lay, but still willing to lay it with Maryland. This team has been able to do a tremendous job on defense all season long. They're a top 15 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and with Maryland, it's really interesting. They're allowing opponents at home to shoot 35% from 3. This drops to about 27.5% in a roadside shoot court environment, and I do think that we're going to see some positivity come through here, and I do think that Maryland is going to do a nice job of being able to control the boards. Last time these two teams played, Northwestern, they picked up a 72-69 win in Evansville, but in that game, you had Northwestern have out there on the floor. Tiberi was able to give you double figures. He's now up for the season for a Northwestern team that, quite frankly, doesn't have a lot of depth. Now, good news for them is that they've been able to go 3-1 in their 4 games without Tiberi, who was averaging 11.5 points and was their top 3-point shooter at 43.5% from distance. But for Northwestern, they just don't have a lot of guys to be able to fill in from. You've got Matt Nicholson down low to be able to give you about 5.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. But this is now a very, very thin backcourt that you've got Ryan Langford, Brooks Barnizer, Boo Buie. They've been able to do a nice job, but Barnizer is the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Team does a good job of being able to take care of the ball and really slow things down to a crawl. But for Northwestern, also, I take their wins that they've gotten without Tiberi with a little bit of a grain of salt. They were able to knock off 3 teams that are sub 500 out there in the Big Ten, and Penn State, Indiana, and Michigan. And for Northwestern, they certainly give it up from 3-point range as well. Maryland has been terrible from 3-point range. They're 347th in all of college basketball. But when these two teams hooked up the first time around, they went 6-17 from 3 against a Northwestern team as legitimately outside the top 330 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage. And you got, in my opinion, the best player on there on the floor on Maryland's side. Now, Boo Buie is very good at his own right. 18 points. He's able to give you about 5 assists. Shoots it well from 3-point range. But you've got Jameer Young, who just impacts the game in so many different ways. 21 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. Shoots 35% from 3 for a team that they do need that 35% 3-point shooting. And then Julian Reese down low is able to give you a double-double, 14 points, 9.5 boards, 2 blocks per contest. I just think that there's going to be too much down low for Maryland. Maryland, they completely run you off the 3-point line. Northwestern, they get about 35.5% of their points in a roadside shoot court venue from made threes. That is one of the highest marks in all of college basketball. And you got a Maryland team that, while they're just 211th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, they do score 13.5 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot court venue. And I do think that they're going to do a nice job of being able to take hold here. So my write-up pick, that is going to be on Maryland laying the number. This has already been posted up. I got it at a 3.5, like I said, at 5.5. Absolute max I'm willing to lay, and I set my total at a 130 as well. I do think that this is nip and tuck enough for late game felling, and I do think that Maryland going to take advantage of a Northwestern defense that is outside the top 170 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. So you have the 128.5, 129.5 looking over at my write-up. That is going to be on Maryland. 697, 698 on the betting board. Wofford is playing host to Samford. Samford is a road favorite of 5.5 points. saw this game between 152 and 153 with old Sam Samford. I did make them the favorite of 6.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Samford. They do just such a good job of being able to pop it from three, a top 20 team in terms of their three-point shooting percentage, while just being a pretty much Death Star in terms of generating turnovers. In terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they're a top 30 team in all of college basketball. Going up against a Wofford team that they're not great, they're not terrible at taking care of the ball. 11.5 turnovers per game for their tempo. That's relatively average, but you have a Samford team that they're not afraid to foul, and you've got a Wofford team that shoots 62% at the free throw line. That's a little bit of an issue. You do have Kyler Firewich, who should be the best rebounder in this game for Wofford. He's able to give you 9.5 points, 9 rebounds per contest, and then you've got a pair of guys in the backcourt, Corey Tripp along Dylan Bailey, who've been able to supply about 27.5 points per contest, with Bailey shooting 35.5% from three, and that's where you do need to attack Samford. You need to, for one, be able to hit your free throws, which Wofford does not do, and for Samford, they really do give it up from three-point range. At home, they allow opponents to shoot 36% from three. Now, on the road, this goes down to 31%, but I do think that those numbers are going to iron out as we move forward. But for Wofford, this defense has just been leaky all season long. Wofford outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They are allowing opponents to shoot 36% from three-point range. That is not a good combination, especially when you have got a Samford team that is just so efficient with the way that they run things with their offense, with Ryland Jones being able to give you 5 assists and 1.3 turnovers per game, anchor, 15 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. You've got shooters just all over the floor for the Samford team, as if you take a look at their top 3 scorers, they all shoot at least 42% from three-point range, and if you take out Jermaine Marshall, who he has been in and out of the fold all season long. They've been able to get him back last few games, but he has already missed 12 games. So among players that have played at least 20 games this season, all 4 of their top 4 scorers are shooting at least 40% from three-point range. You've got such good versatility. A Wofford team that has just been so rough with regards to their defense all season long. I will say for them, credit where credit is due. They've given up 65 points or fewer throughout their last 5 games. The Samford team, they could speed up anyone though, and I do think that Samford going to be able to take it out on them. First time these two teams played, it was a 81-79 nip and tuck game where Wofford lost the game while shooting 17 of 33 from three-point range. I don't think that lightning strikes twice. I set Samford as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and did set my total 158.5. Going to be looking at the over as well. 699, 700 on the betting board. Marquette is going to be playing us Providence. Providence is a 10.5 point underdog with your total between 150 and 149.5. Did set my total 148. I'm going to be looking at the under. It's a Providence unit that is still a top 40 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Certainly, they have not been the same since Bryce Hopkins has been out of the fold, but this team does a nice job being able to slow things down. And the biggest issue that you do have with this Providence team, they turn the ball over a lot against a Marquette team that's in the top 15 nationally with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Devin Carter, he has been tremendous. 19.5 points, 8 boards, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals, a block on 40% three-point shooting. You can't ask for anything more. And Josh Oduro, he was not a good three-point shooter while he was over at George Mason, but he's shooting 34% from distance this season. But past that, you've got a lot of inconsistency with this team. You've been able to get about 8.5 points, 4.5 boards out of Ticket Gaines, who's been able to do a relatively solid job, which that's one of the more interesting first games I've ever seen. But that said, with regards to Marquette, you're going to have Tyler Kolek just be able to take over this game. 15 points, 5 boards, 7.5 assists at 2.7 turnovers per game on Marquette. They're not playing as fast as they did a season ago, but they're still a top 40 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. And for Marquette, even though they just haven't necessarily been the world's greatest three-point shooting team, they shoot 34.8% from three. So it's not like they're awful, but it's not like this is some sort of a flamethrower team from three-point range. But even with that, because they're just so efficient with the ball, they're 37th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, the turnovers have Providence for around 173rd, and for Providence, they do score 10 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. And for Providence, the defense, it does act up a little bit when they're on the road. They're giving up about 6 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Marquette really does feast off of this home crowd as well, giving up 11.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, with having Oso Ogudero do a solid job down low. 7.5 boards, a steal, a block per contest. Now, because he's the only guy in the roster that gives you a really north of 5 rebounds per game. Marquette is outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate. Providence should have a nice little advantage there, but I do think that for Marquette, they're going to be able to force a lot of turnovers on a Providence unit that, credit where credit is due, they've gotten to at least 72 points in each of their last 5 games, but Marquette starting to get it going on defense as well. 72 points or fewer surrendered in 3 out of their last 4 games. So, circumstance where I did set my total 148, I'm diving under. And with Marquette willing to lay up to 11.5 with them. 701, 702 on the betting board. DePaul is going to be on the road facing up against Xavier. The X-Men are a 19.5 point favorite, and your total on this game, you're going to be getting that at a 155.5 to a 156.5. Set my total more around a 154.5. I'm looking at the under just because I don't think DePaul does their part with this total. This DePaul team is just so sad and rudderless right now that it's not even funny. Now, they do get Chico Carter back in the fold, and that's big. That's their top scorer, 3.5 assists, 11 points per contest, shoots about 33% from three-point range, and for DePaul, they looked a little bit more competent on offense with them out there on the floor against Georgetown. They've been able to get to at least 70 points in each of their last 3 games, but you've got a Xavier team that, while they've had their struggles on defense all season long, they are well outside the top 100 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They do a relatively solid job of being able to hit the glass. They're about 126th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and I think that they are just going to pound the tar out of this DePaul team, and at home they're allowing opponents to shoot just 31% from three-point range. You've got a Xavier bunch as Quincy Oliveri doing a nice job supplying 9 points, 1.3 steals per contest, and shoots about 43% from three-point range. All in all, it is a DePaul team that you shoot about 34% from three-point range, so they've been a little bit touch and go there, but despite the fact that Xavier, not necessarily the world's greatest rebound rate team, they're 92nd. It's not like they're awful or anything like that, but other than Abdou Ousmane, who's been able to do a very nice job down low, giving you about 6.5 rebounds per game, you don't have a ton of rim protection. Not like this DePaul team has any of that whatsoever. DePaul does not have a single guy that averages north of 4.5 rebounds per game. They're 353rd with regards to rebound rate. Davion McKnight, meanwhile, for Xavier, he's a do-it-all guy, 12 points, 4 boards, 5 assists, steal and half per contest, shooting 36% from three-point range. And you got the versatility of Gaitis Nemsika, who's popping threes at about a 36% clip. He's been able to throw in there about 6 points. He's been able to give you about 4.5, 5 rebounds per game as well. So these guys are all contributing quite well. Meanwhile, Deshaun Nelson is having to do a little bit of everything for DePaul, 4 boards, 10 points, but you just have no functionality whatsoever with DePaul. They don't have a coach right now. It's just been really, really bad. It's a circumstance where set Xavier as a 20.5 point favorite. DePaul just keeps getting killed night in and night out when they don't play against our good friends in Georgetown by 20 plus points. So the first time these two teams played, it was 93-68. So circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I just flat out don't think DePaul holds up their end of the bargain with regards to this total. So looking under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Xavier. 7-3, 7-4 on the betting board. It is Tennessee, and they play host to Auburn. Auburn finds themselves as an underdog of anywhere between 6 to 6.5 points. Totals between 151 and 151.5. I set my line at 5, so I'm going to be willing to take 6+ here with Auburn. Auburn has been a little bit inconsistent over the last few years when they've hit the road, but I do think that they are perhaps the most balanced team out there in the SEC with what you've been able to get out of G&I Broom, cleaning up down low as he gives you 16 points, 8.5 boards, 2.5 blocks per contest, and he's been able to pop it well from 3. Each of your top 3 scorers for Auburn are shooting at least 41% from three-point range. Now, they've been dealing with an injury to Jalen Williams. That is rough, and that certainly needs to be accounted for here. He was averaging 13 points, shooting north of 40% from three-point range, but he still have been able to get some nice production on someone like Denver Jones, who's able to give you 8 points per contest. Now, the injury that you have with Williams, that also helps out Tennessee down low, who's been one of your top rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. Jonas Adu being able to chip in there about 7.5 boards, 12 points per contest, and I always just love Josiah Jordan-James. He doesn't do one thing great, but he just gives you what the game calls for. A little bit over a steal, 9 points, 6 boards, pair of assists, and then you've also got Dalton Connect, who we all know what he's doing. 20 points on earth of 40% three-point shooting, but both of these teams have been really good on offense. Both of these teams have been really good on defense. Both of these teams within the top 50 in terms of points scored on a per-possession basis. Both of these teams within the top 40 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. And for Auburn, as much grief as I want to give them on the road, they allow opponents to shoot 29.2% from three-point range at home. That only goes up to 30% away from home. So they've been able to travel quite well. Just a case where Tennessee has been much better when they have been at home rather than on the road in terms of their defense. As a matter of fact, for Tennessee, they are giving up about 18.4 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot scoring environment. And for this Auburn team, take a look at their overall defense. They are giving up about 8.9 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. That, again, is not a terrible split. Both of these teams do a good job not turning the ball over a whole lot. Both of these teams less than 11 turnovers per game. And Tennessee has been speeding up a little bit, but it's not like they're absolutely running it and gunning it as well. I do think that this is going to be a little bit more of a defense-oriented game. I did set my total at a 147. Here at the north of 150. I'm going to be looking at the under. Now with Auburn, I did set them as an underdog of 5, so I'm willing to take north of 6 here. 7:05, 7:06 on the betting board. UW Green Bay, it's a road face-off against Cleveland St. Cleveland St, a 7 to 7.5 point favorite. Your total between 138 and 138.5. Made my line 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Sounds like Noah Reynolds, if he does play in this game, is going to be less than 100%, but sounds like they're going to be targeting him coming back for the Horizon League tournament, and that is just an absolutely massive loss for UW Green Bay because he is right now their top scorer with north of 18 points per contest. He shoots it from three-point range in the high 30s. He's been their main facilitator. He just is the engine that makes this UW Green Bay team run, and we saw it in their last game against Youngstown St without him in the fold. They get lambasted, lose that game by double figures, and they don't threaten 65 points. I think that we could be seeing something very similar here against a Cleveland State team that, they're not necessarily supreme with their three-point shooting. They shoot about 35 or so percent from three-point range, but they do a nice job ripping the ball away. Top 100 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Their top 3 scorers, all of them give you at least 1.2 steals per game, including Tristan and Aruna. 20 points, 6.5 boards, 1.2 steals per contest. It is a Cleveland State team that, if you do have trepidation with playing this number, it is probably because they shoot 67% at the free throw line. And you do have Elijah Jones on the flip side for Green Bay. He's able to give you north of 5 boards, 8.5 points per game, and shoots it well from three-point range for a UW Green Bay team that, as a whole, they've done a nice job being able to guard the three-point arc. UW Green Bay, 27th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're within the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. And for UW Green Bay, a relatively national average rebound rate team. Cleveland State outside the top 200, but Cleveland State does a good job locking you down from beyond the arc. Top 70 team in all of college basketball in that regard. And then you've got someone like a Drew Lauder who's been able to do a nice job being able to supply about 3 assists, 12 points per contest. It's a really nice collective that you got for Cleveland State. And right now with UW Green Bay, dealing with that Noah Reynolds injury, you're going to be looking at guys like Foster Wonder in the backcourt to help facilitate the offense. And they just really don't have that number 2 guy that's able to take over the point guard reins, which is a big reason why I did set my total a little bit lower. I did set my total 136.5. I'm looking at the under of Cleveland State. Made them an 8.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 7:07, 7:08 on the betting board. UW Milwaukee. It's the road they're facing off against IUPUI. Old UEPUI is a 12.5 to a 13-point underdog with your total between 153 and 154. And for UW Milwaukee, I did set them as a favorite of 11.5 points. I think that we've gone a little bit too far. I'm going to be willing to take IUPUI at home, and it's a grody IUPUI team, but they've got one of the best players out there on the floor in Jalen Counter. He's been terrific with 3 assists, 4.5 boards, 14.5 points per game, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. He's been able to do everything humanly possible to help out this IUPUI team. Now the question is, are you going to be able to get some help from your friends? Bryce Monroe, Vincent Brady. These 2 guys have been able to combine for about 20 points per contest. Neither of these guys shoot it well from 3, and as a matter of fact, outside of Jalen Counter, you've got one guy on the roster that shoots above 33% from three-point range. That'd be John Egbuda, who's been able to shoot about 34% from 3 with 5.5 points per contest. It's really not good, to say the least. You've got a UW Milwaukee team, though, that they are well outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and if you're able to get right from three-point range against anyone, it is UW Milwaukee. UW Milwaukee is allowing opponents to shoot north of 34.5% from three-point range at home, north of 31% in a roadside neutral court venue. Now for BJ Freeman, he's going to be the best player out there on the floor. 20 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, steal per contest, shoots about 37% from 3 for a UW Milwaukee team that overall they're shooting about 33% from the outside. And for UW Milwaukee, a top 125 team with regards to rebound rate, you've got someone like Kentrell Pullian, who's able to give you about 5 boards per contest facing on fields, 6 boards, 8.5 points, a block per contest. So these guys have been able to do a relatively solid job on that front. And just all in all, for this UW Milwaukee team, I believe that you now have 6 different guys. They're able to give you at least 4 rebounds per game, though 1 or 2 of them have been a little bit banged up, like Aaron Franklin. He has been in and out of the fold, just returned for the team recently, but I do think that for UW Milwaukee, they're going to be able to win from within, but this Milwaukee defense just still has me very off-put. It has been very tough for UW Milwaukee to be able to win by differential, with them being well outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Fully recognize that this is an IUPUI team that they're rough. They're really rough, and the last time they played against UW Milwaukee, They lost 87-67 on a night where Milwaukee shot 8 of 16 from 3. They shot 2 of 14 from distance. I think that irons out just a little bit, and I do think that UW Milwaukee, they just continue to get cash, giving up points. I did set my total 153.5, between a 153 and a 154. I'd rather have the 153 over rather than the 154 under. I just have zero faith whatsoever in this UW Milwaukee defense, and that's a big reason why I'm taking the points with IUPUI. Set them as an 11.5 point underdog. 709, 710 on the betting board. Duke is going to be playing us at Louisville. Louisville is an underdog of 19.5 to 20 points. Your total on this game going to be getting it at 151.5, and with Duke, I did set them as a favorite of 21.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. I think Duke is going to be very angry after the court storming situation that we saw a few days ago. This podcast will not be fleshing that out. You've heard way more than enough of it. There's way more than enough podcasts that are talking about it, so we'll leave that to the other guys. We're looking to make you money. Duke, they've got Kyle Filipowski, probably going to be good to go in this one. He's been able to log 17 points, 8 boards. I think a lot of that was acting. I'm going to call it what it is. It does not sound like it's very serious. I fully expect him to play in this game. He might get pulled a little bit early, but I think that that's because you get a butt kicking in this one with the way that Duke has been able to operate on offense. Top 25 team in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and they've really done a nice job bearing down on defense. It's not a Duke team that necessarily plays super fast as well. They're right around about 200th in the country with regards to total possessions per game. They do a solid job of cutting you off from the three-point line. Top 100 team with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and Louisville, they are not. They are 321st in the country. In terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, Louisville, they are right around about 300th in the nation in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Down low, you've had Brandon Huntley-Hatfield do a nice job being able to supply you within that neighborhood about 8 to 9 rebounds per game, and been able to get a little bit more in the backcourt with Sky Clark tripping in there 13.5 points per game, but this Louisville team is just really sad at this point. Other than Huntley-Hatfield, you really don't have a ton in terms of rebounding. The team shoots 30.5% from 3 with 13 turnovers per game. They're outside the top 200 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Last time these two teams played, you have to flip it back to January. Duke went on the road. They won that game 83-69 on a night where Louisville was able to actually do a relatively okay job, shooting 46% from the floor, but they just got completely lambasted on the glass with having Mark Mitchell along with Kyle Filipowski combined for 27 rebounds, while Louisville had 28 as a whole. I do think that Duke is going to be able to just completely plow this Louisville team on the glass. I think that Duke is going to be able to get a lot of open looks, and like I said, I think Kyle Filipowski plays in this game. Did somebody total 149.5? I just don't know if Louisville's able to do their part with this total, and Duke is now a rather slow tempo team. You've got a Louisville team that as well failed to get past the 60-point plateau in each of their last two games, so looking under, and I'm going to be looking to lay up to 21 here with Duke. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. Arkansas State, it's the road they're facing off against Coastal Carolina. The Chanticleers are a home underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. Your total on this game is anywhere between 156.5 and 157, and with the Chanticleers, I did set them as an 8-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Coastal Carolina for Coastal Carolina. It's been a relatively rough season for them, but hey, go up against an Arkansas State team that just isn't the same team when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. Arkansas State is averaging north of 20 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot-score venue, and you do have a Chanticleers team that is in the top 225 in terms of their rebound rate going up against an Arkansas State team that really, other than DeAndre Dominguez, who's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, 13 points per contest, they just don't have a ton down low. I do think that Coastal Carolina is going to need to get a little bit more from the perimeter as well. They go up against an Arkansas State team that isn't great at generating turnovers, only about 5.5 steals per game, but Coastal Carolina has been sloppy joes all season long on offense, 13.5 turnovers per game, but they should be able to hold in their down low with Janika Ojiako being able to give you about 10.5 or so rebounds per game. Jacob Myers, 5 boards, 15 points. She's 41% from three-point range, and you have your top 3 scorers that have made at least 1 3 this year for Coastal Carolina, all 3 shooting north of 37% from 3, while you do have an Arkansas State team that has a trio of guys in Dominguez, Caleb Fields, Sharon Todd, all supplying between about 11.5 to 13 points per contest, with Fields 6 assists, 2.3 turnovers per game, and Arkansas State, in their own right, they do shoot about 36% from three-point range, but this is an Arkansas State unit that, as well, they're going to give it up a little bit from the outside. Arkansas State, 282nd in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that's a 40.6% is what they allow opponents to shoot from three-point range at home. That falls at 30.6% in a roadside shoot-score venue. Coastal Carolina really doesn't have the world's biggest home and road splits. Coastal Carolina 311th in the country with regards to points allowed allowed on a per possession basis, only allowing 1.3 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside neutral court environment. Meanwhile, Arkansas State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they actually give up about 5.5 points per 100 possessions fewer when they leave home. Despite the fact that you do have that home and road split, I did set my total at a 158 because I do think that this is going to be close enough for some late game felling, and Arkansas State has been able to score a lot of points wherever they've been. Coastal Carolina, another bunch as well outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. A circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take a look at the over, and with Coastal Carolina, anything north of 8, going to be willing to take the points with them. Sub 13, sub 14 on the betting board. It is Belmont on the road facing off against Murray State, and Murray State is a favorite of 2 points. Your total on this game, it is between 149 and 149.5, and with Belmont, I did set them as a underdog of 4 points. So here at the 2, I'm going to be willing to lay the number. For Murray State, they've really done a nice job of being able to lock it down on defense. The one thing that is lacking for them is 3-point shooting defense, and both of these teams are rough with their outside shooting defense. Belmont, in a roadside-neutral court environment, they're allowing opponents to shoot 37.5% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, it's a Murray State unit that, for the entirety of the season, they are allowing opponents to shoot 36.3% from 3, and that balloons up to 38.1% from the outside when they are at home. So it makes things very intriguing with regards to handicap. I did set my total, though, at a 146 because you do have a Murray State team that is well outside the top 250 with regards to total possessions per game. And if you just take a look at Murray State and the way that they've been able to play defense in the Missouri Valley as opposed to what they were doing towards non-conference play, it's just completely night and day. Murray State was just getting completely lambasted in non-conference competition. Meanwhile, here in conference, this team gave up 72 points or fewer in 6 out of their 7 games here this month. And I mean, for that matter, Murray State has now given up 72 points or fewer in all but one of their games since January 2nd, and on January 2nd, they gave up 73 points. You've got a nice backcourt trio, really, in Jacoby Wood, Rob Perry, Quincy Anderson. These 3 guys, they'll give you between 12 and 13 points per contest. They all supply 4.2 to 5 rebounds per contest. Wood is able to give you 4.3 assists per game, and Anderson and Wood both shoot 39% from 3-point range. For a Murray State team that's only turning the ball over about 9.5 times per contest, they are a top 30 team with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, going against the Belmont team that is able to throw it in the bucket really well from 3. They shoot as a collective 37% from the outside, but they also do commit about 12.5 turnovers per contest. That's a little bit of an issue. Jacoby Gillespie has been in and out of the fold for the team. He's been the top scorer with 18 points per game. They've got him back, and he's been firing all cylinders since he's come back 17-plus points each of the last 5 games. You've got Malik Dia, who's got size. He's able to give you about 17 points per contest, while Cade Tyson, he has been a north of 38% 3-point shooter with about 16.5 points per contest himself. But it's a little bit of a top-heavy team. Keyshawn Davidson is able to give you a little bit of facilitation, but Belmont, while outside the top 240 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and Belmont, just quite frankly, is not going to be able to do a good job on the glass. Really, both of these teams do lack with regards to being able to hit the boards. Murray State, 213th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Nick Ellingson is able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, and that's about it. But for Belmont, in terms of their rebound rate, it's even worse at 269th. I do think that as a result, you are going to have Murray State be able to take control of this game, in a game that I think is going to be a little bit lower scoring, and I think that Murray State just continues to play that good, solid defense against a Belmont bunch that has been a little bit better themselves on defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in 2 out of their last 4 games. So I did set my total 146 looking at the under with Murray State. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3.5 with them. 715, 716 on the betting board. Bradley plays us to Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois is an underdog of 8 points. Total on this game between 134.5 and 135.5. Set Southern Illinois as an underdog of 7 points. Here at the 8, going to be willing to take those points. Southern Illinois has been able to cover darn near 2/3 of their games as far this season, and they do a nice job of just really sticking in the mud. They're outside the top 320 with regards to total possessions per game, and Southern Illinois has had a forte of just being able to cut teams off from 3-point range. Southern Illinois, 9th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, while Bradley, they're going to let up some open looks from 3-point range. They are 208th overall in opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, which shoots up to about 34.4% when they're at home. You've been able to get some good production, though, out of the versatile gentleman, Levy Leon's 15 points, 7 boards. He's able to pop it from 3-point range, and when it comes to overall rebound rate, Bradley is going to have a little bit of a leg up there. Bradley, in terms of their overall rebound rate, this team is checking in right around about 135th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, it's a Southern Illinois team that, despite the fact that Clarence Rupert has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, they're about 130th. Both of these teams rather sustainable, and Southern Illinois, to the surprise of myself, they're actually having a better rebound rate when they're on the road rather than when they are at home. But for Bradley, I do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job being able to just have good functioning offense, and they've got more depth than Southern Illinois does. Southern Illinois has the top player in this game. That'd be Xavier Johnson. He has been the do-it-all guy. 22.5 points, 6.2 assists, shooting from three-point range about 36.5%, throws in there a steal and half per contest, and it translates on the road. His home and road splits are pretty much the same. Meanwhile, for Bradley, you've got a duo in Connor Hickman along Duquesne, who have been able to both give you 14.5 points per contest. Between the two of them, about 7.2 assists, 2.5 steals, with both shooting 39% from three-point range, but even though you've got a little bit more of a top-heavy Southern Illinois team with regards to the offense, the defensive pieces like A.J. Ferguson, who's been able to give you 8.5 points per contest, Troy D'Amico, who's been able to chip in their 9 points, shoots 35% from three. I do think that they keep them lively in a game that I think is going to be a bit lower scoring. Bradley has been efficient both on the offensive side of things and the defensive side of things. So here with this total, semi-total at 135. I'm seeing 135 to 135.5 pretty much across the board right now. Looking at the under of Southern Illinois, I'm going to take 8, set them as a 7-point underdog. 7-17, 7-18 on the betting board. Evansville plays us at Indiana State. Indiana State, a 9 to a 9.5 point road favorite. Your total is between 156 and 157. And with Indiana State, I made them a favorite of 11 points. I'm going to be willing to lay now with Ben Humericus back in the fold for Evansville. It's been much better for them on offense. They got stuck in the mud in their game against Southern Illinois, but that's just going to happen when you play against Southern Illinois. This has been a bunch that has really relied upon Humericus for all their scoring. He gives you 14 points on north of 40% three-point shooting for an Evansville team as well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, and it's an Evansville team that's outside the top 260 with opponents' three-point shooting percentage and 218th overall in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Going up against an Indiana State team that they're certainly going to allow a few open buckets here and there. They're 79th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they are giving up at a roadside shoot score venue about 15.5 points more per 100 possessions as well, but this is an Evansville team that they themselves are giving you a little bit more in terms of their defensive tenacity when they're at home rather than when they are on the road for Evansville. They've been giving up about 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions at home, so that should be able to help them out, but still have an Indiana State team that's in the top 25 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Robbie Avila, I think, is going to be pretty unguardable in this circumstance. He's been able to do an amazing job for this Indiana State team, being able to supply 15 plus points, 6 plus boards, able to pop it from three-point range and just up and down the boulevard. When it comes to Indiana State, you've got a bunch of great shooters. Isaac Swope just continues to give you about 18 or so points per contest, and you've got interchangeable parts when it comes to doling out the ball. Avila, along Julian Larry, and Xavier Bledson, they all combine for about 12 assists per contest. You've got Larry shooting 45.5% from three. Indiana State as a whole shoots north of 50% from the floor. So I do think that Indiana State is going to be able to put a hurting on Evansville. Did set my total at a 155. I do think that for Evansville, there are some question marks with regards to how they're going to be able to function on offense. They were able to get to 70 plus prior to that game against Southern Illinois, but you got an Indiana State team that honestly has been able to play some halfway decent defense recently. They had that rough 2-game stretch against Southern Illinois and Illinois State, but past that, they've actually been able to do a halfway decent job being a top 80 defense. So did set my total at 155, diving in on the under. I think Indiana State made them 11-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. 719, 720 on the betting board. Western Kentucky plays us Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is an favorite of 1.5 to 2 points on this game between 148 and 148.5. Set Western Kentucky as an underdog of 2.5 points. Here at the 2, it's max I'm willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay. Louisiana Tech is a top 5 team in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, facing a Western Kentucky team that has done a really good job of being able to cut teams off from the outside. Western Kentucky, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, is currently a top 20 team in all of college basketball. That actually goes up to 32.5% at home compared to 28.4% in a roadside shoot court venue, but they rely a little bit too much, in my opinion, on Dominic Henry, who's been terrific. He's been able to give this team 16 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 40% from three-point range. He's like the only guy other than Deontay Allen, though, that shoots about 35% from three. With Western Kentucky, they do play fast, but it's a little bit too much with the 14 turnovers per game. You've got Baba Carfe, who's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game, and for Western Kentucky, typically this is a bunch that is able to win the battle on the glass. That's just not going to happen against Louisiana Tech. For Western Kentucky, they're about 83rd in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Louisiana Tech, meanwhile, they're 24th, with the Bacho man, Daniel Bacho, being able to register a double-double, 12-plus points, 10-plus rebounds. He's able to do a nice job, also giving you a few blocks per contest as well. And then you're able to throw in there Isaiah Crawford, who's able to shoot 41.5% from three, 16.5 points, 2 steals, 2 blocks, of his own. Louisiana Tech, they just have the interior on lockdown. You've got a Western Kentucky team that does struggle with their outside shooting, and even though Louisiana Tech is a little bit top-heavy with their scoring, only 3 guys that give you north of 6.9 points per contest, you do have a nice facilitator, and Sean Newman Jr. does give you those 6.9 points per contest that does do a nice job of being able to have free-flowing offense. So it is a spot where I set Louisiana Tech as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number and did set my total at 146.5. I think that we've gone just too far with this 148 total. Louisiana Tech, by no stretch of the imagination, is a slug, but man, they're just locking teams down right now. They have given up fewer than 66 points in 4 of their last 5 games, with the outlier being 68. So looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Louisiana Tech. 721, 722 on the betting board. South Alabama, they are going to be playing us to Southern Miss. Southern Miss is an underdog of 3.5 points. So your total on this game is 147 to 147.5. I did set Southern Miss as an underdog of 5.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it. South Alabama has been up and down all season long, and it has been a unit that has just not played a lot of defense or outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. But Southern Miss is just ghastly in terms of trying to guard the three-point arc. They are outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage. And for South Alabama, even though they've been getting lambasted on the glass, or outside the top 200 with regards to rebound rate, that's not going to be a concern in this game, with Southern Miss not doing a good job on glass, and you've been able to have quite a few guys that have been able to hit their threes. They're, as a collective, shooting about 34.8% from the outside. You've been able to get about 41.9% three-point shooting out of Marcus Millender, who has been a little bit of an off-and-on scorer that has really been able to emerge. 9+ points in each of the last 4 games overall for the season, only giving you about 9.5 points per contest. Isaiah Gator, along with Terrell Jones, have been your top 2 scorers with about 26 points per contest. Both of these guys combined to shoot about 37.5% from distance. And for South Alabama, the defense has really lacked this year, but they're only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest on offense. They've been solid there. Going against the Southern Miss unit that they've just been so inconsistent with regards to their offense. Andre Curbelo has come back into the fold. He finally played a full allotment of minutes for the first time in quite some time against Louisiana. He was able to give the team 24 points, and in typical Andre Curbelo fashion, he had 8 boards, 3 assists, and 6 turnovers. And the game before that against South Alabama, last time these two teams played, he played 12 minutes and he had 5 turnovers and 0 points. Yeah, that's the Andre Curbelo experience, ladies and gentlemen. You just can't trust in that guy. You got Victor Hart, who's been able to do a relatively solid job when he's been out there down low for the Southern Miss team. He himself has missed quite a bit of time, missed pretty much the back half of January into February, and he's been able to do a nice job, give you 13.5 points, 6.5 boards. So this is a Southern Miss team that they've got a few pieces back in the fold. They're just not a very trustworthy team, and when Andre Curbelo is out there, this team just gets gashed time and time again with regards to their defense. Meanwhile, you've got a South Alabama team that they themselves have been having a little bit of a rough go of it on defense all season long, but you know what? They've given up 66 points for fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. It is a Southern Miss team that has been all over the place with regards to both their offense and their defense all season long. So it is a circumstance where I do think that South Alabama is going to be able to do a okay job on the glass with having Thomas Howell give you 6 rebounds per game. With Southern Miss, there's just no trusting in a lot of these guys, and it does feel like their top scorer in Austin Crowley, who's able to give you 16 points per contest, just doesn't necessarily play the world's greatest off of Andre Curbelo as well. He had 4 turnovers in that most recent game against Louisiana as well. So circumstance where I did set my line at 5.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with South Alabama, and I do think that the sloppiness of the turnovers is going to cause for an under. Going to be looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with South Alabama. 723, 724 on the betting board. UAB plays versus Wichita State. Wichita State is a underdog of 8 points. So on this game between 147 and 147.5. Say UAB has just a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 8 with Wichita State. Wichita State has been one of your worst cover teams in all of college basketball, but I feel like this team is on the cusp of something. The offense has not been there. They're well outside the top 200 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. As a collective, this team only shoots about 31% from 3-point range, but Wichita State, a top 125 team with rebound rate. Kenny Poto, Dallin Reginald, Quincy Ballard, they all combine to be able to give you about 18.5 rebounds per game. You get 2 blocks per contest out of Ballard. Now, Kobe Rogers is really your lone, reliable outside shooter. He's been able to shoot 38% from 3, 15.5 points. Love what he's able to bring to the table. And for Wichita State, this bunch has been having their ups and downs all season long with regards to the perimeter, but they've guarded it well. The 3-point shooting themselves on offense has not been great, but they're 83rd in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and that's where you can hurt this UAB team. At home, they're allowing opponents to shoot 36.7% from 3, and UAB is well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they have to rely upon offensive rebounds to be able to get their offense going. Yaxel Lenborg has been terrific. He's given the team 12+ points, 10+ rebounds per game, but For UAB, in terms of offensive rebound rate, they're a top 40 team in all of college basketball, but outside of that, they really don't generate a lot of offense. They shoot 31% from three, the 12 turnovers per game. It's neither here nor there with their tempo. They're a relatively fast-paced team. You've got Daniel Ortiz, who's able to give you about 6.5 points per contest, but would have liked to see a little bit more from the outside of Eric Gaines, who's been able to give you 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 boards, 12 points per game. Also shoots 23% from three-point range. Outside of Lenborg, you've been able to have Ephraim Johnson, who's been able to shoot 37.5% from three. That's your full allotment of guys that have been able to shoot north of 32% from three-point range as far this season. I do think that Wichita State going to do a nice job guarding from the outside with the UAB. They do a nice job on the glass, but Wichita State, I do think is going to be able to match that. You've got a UAB team that has been coming to the forefront with their defense, giving up fewer than 70 points in 3 of their last 5 games. And for Wichita State, they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games, but they've given up 72 points or fewer in 4 out of those 5. And the lone game that they did not, that was that overtime game against Florida Atlantic, where it was 74-74 going into overtime. So I do think that Wichita State going to be able to hold up defensively. I did set my total at a 147.5. Right now we're seeing a lot of 147.5 here at the current number. I would be willing to just wait a little bit, try to get this up to a 148 to take a look at the under. I would rather have a 148 under rather than a 147 over. So looking there, and with Wichita State, did set them as just a 5.5 point underdog, so going to be willing to take the points with them. 725, 726 on the betting board. UTSA, meet for the Roadrunners. They play host at Tulsa. Tulsa is an underdog of 2 points. Totals between 159.5 and 160. Made Tulsa the 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be looking at Tulsa outright on the money line. It has been a rough year defensively for UTSA overall, and in conference, it's been a rough year for Tulsa. I remember doing a write-up pick for the over in this one, and in that game, I remember Tulsa getting like 100 points. So I do think that you're going to be able to get lots of scoring once again. And for a pair of teams that are in the top 50 nationally with regards to total possessions per game for UTSA, they're not terrible on the glass. You've been able to have Carlton Lingard be able to provide some versatility. He's able to supply you with about 10 points, 6 boards, block and a half per contest. Jordan Ivy Curry, ever since he has been eligible to play, he missed the first 12 or so games of the season. He has just been a microwave scorer. 16.5 points, 5.5 boards, shoots 36% from three-point range. Has been a little bit hot and cold recently, but I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to cook with some gas on offense. You got a Tulsa team that does turn the ball over 12.5 times per contest, but PJ Haggerty is able to give you 19 plus points per contest. This Tulsa unit has been able to do a nice job of just being able to get some good overall facilitation as well out of him, with about 3.5 assists per contest. For Tulsa, your main weak point is on the glass. So you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 6 rebounds per game. They're outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, but they do shoot about 32.5% from three. Kobe Williams has thrown in there 12.5 points, 3.5 assists per contest. Israel Barnes shoots about 35% from three, 8.5 points per game. So I do think that you have all the tools for an over in this spot. It's just all about, can Tulsa be able to just guard the three-point line the way that they did at the beginning part of the season? For Tulsa, they were out of conference, a top 50 team with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and they're still 89th in the country, but they allow opponents to shoot 37.7% from three-point range away from home. That goes all the way down to 28.9% when they're at home. Meanwhile, for UTSA, they have been getting cooked from three-point range. They allow opponents to shoot 37.4% from distance. That is 349th in all of college basketball. And for UTSA, if you look at their overall offense, it has been good all season long. UTSA, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, about 166th in all of college basketball, but they're only getting a boost of about 0.7 points more per 100 possessions while they're at home. Meanwhile, for this Tulsa unit, they do see a nosedive of about 15.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home, but I do think that after they scored north of 100 on these guys the first time around, they're going to be able to get their offense going. I do think that even though UTSA has a little bit of advantage on the glass, you've got a Tulsa team that does a good job ripping the ball away with Haggerty and Williams both giving you 2+ steals per contest, and I think that that'll win out for a Tulsa unit that has been a little bit better defensively recently, giving up 70 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games, and if you're looking in regulation and regulation only, they've been able to do a nice job on that front in 3 out of their last 4. So I'm going to be taking a look at Tulsa outright on the money line. It's a UTSA team that they're just giving up points upon points, so also going to be looking at the over to go along with the money line. 727, 728 on the betting board. It is Richmond. They hit the road. They're facing off against St. Louis. St. Louis does find themselves as a home underdog of 5 to 5.5 points here total on this game. It's anywhere between 150.5 and 151.5. With St. Louis, I did set them as an underdog of 5.5 points, mostly seeing 5 out there. That's the max I'm willing to lay with Richmond, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with them. This Richmond Spiders team has been very good defensively, a top 40 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. St. Louis is in the bottom 40 nationally with regards to their defense in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But the good news is for St. Louis, the guys that have been injured all season long, Saints Tim Dulger, most of them are back at the fold. You've got Sincere Parker, your top scorer, supplying 16 points, shooting 40% from three-point range. You've had Gibson, Jimerson, along with Terrence Hargrove out there all season long, combining for about 27.5 points per contest. You're all good there, but Bradley Izawairo, who was the transfer from Bradley, a two-time transfer that was denied a waiver to begin the season, he's been able to supply you with about 6 rebounds per game. And for Richmond, this has been a unit that has been really struggling on the glass. You're outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. This is like the fact that you've got the 7-footer Neil Quinn, who's got good versatility. He's been able to give you about 6 boards, 12 points, a few assists per contest. And then you're able to layer in there as well the fact that you've been able to have some relatively good production down low out of Isaac Bigelow, who's been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game, but not like the St. Louis team is necessarily going to be able to bat down the hatches with regards to their rebounding, 250th in all of college basketball. With regards to their rebound rate, Gibson Jimerson continues to shoot it relatively well from three-point range, and St. Louis not bad in terms of their offense. St. Louis very bad in terms of their defense, including giving it up from three-point range. St. Louis, in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, they are well outside the top 250 nationally, and it's not even like they get too much of a boost when they're at home in terms of their overall defense. The three-point shooting defense, a little bit more so. They allow opponents to shoot 32.5% from three-point range at home, 37.5% in a roadside shoot court environment, but Jordan King, he's been able to score all over the place, 18+ points per contest for this Richmond team, and with Richmond, their defense, it just continues to be really good in terms of locking teams down from distance. 29th in the country with opponents' three-point shooting percentage. They shoot up to about 34.8% in a roadside shoot court venue. That said, with St. Louis, it's been a rough season for them all year long. I do think that Richmond, a team that's well outside the top 200 with regards to total possessions per game, they're going to be able to slow this game down. I think they execute on offense and do a nice job locking the St. Louis team down on defense. Semi-total 146.5, diving in on the under and willing to lay up to 5 with St. Louis. 729, 730 on the betting board. Rice, we give our to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They play us to the Temple Owls. Go Owls, as we've got Rice as a 5 to 5.5 point favorite in this battle of Owls. So on this game, it's anywhere between 144.5 and 145. And with Rice, I did set them as a favorite of 5 points. So this is a circumstance where at the 5.5, that is my buy point on Temple. Temple has been a rough team all season long, well outside the top 200 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but they lock you down from three-point range away from home. They're allowing opponents to shoot only about 31.5% from three-point range away from home, and for Temple, for all the issues that they've got on offense, and it's been bad. They just have not been able to hit shots. They're shooting less than 40% from the floor. They do score about 8.5 points fewer per 100 possessions away from home rather than at home, but they only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest. You've got something similar going on with Rice. Rice does turn the ball over a little bit more, but I mean, they're about 188th in all of college basketball with regards to their points scored on a per possession basis. The problem for Rice is they are certainly giving it up from 3-point, 339th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That shoots up to 38.5% at home. Now for Rice, they've got the most versatile player out there on the floor, Max Fiedler. Fiedler is able to give you nearly 5 assists, 9.5 points, 8.5 rebounds. I absolutely love what he does for this team, but outside of him, it just becomes a little bit of a roll of the dice. You know that you're going to have a backcourt of Travis Evie along with Makai Mason, who's going to give you a combined about 31 points per contest, and both of these guys are starting to shoot up with regards to their 3-point shooting percentage. They're up to shooting as a collective about 34.5% from the outside, but you need to get a little bit more out of some of these other ancillary pieces like Alem Husanovic has only been able to give you about 8 points per contest. Anthony Selden, he's only been able to give you about 6 points per game. And for Temple, it's been all about how far can Isaiah Miller be able to take this team. 4 assists, 15.5 points per contest, but you're getting a little bit more down low now out of Jordan Riley. He's been able to give you about 6 boards, 12.5 points per contest. Micah Piccarelli has really been the lone guy that has been able to give you consistent 3-point shooting about 36.5% from 3. For a Temple team that they're in the bottom 50 nationally with regards to 3-point shooting percentage, and both of these teams have been rather rough on the glass. Rice about 190th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. You've got a Temple team that are well outside the top 225 with this regard as well, but I do think that Temple going to be able to do enough to be able to hold in this game against the Rice team that has been all over the place offensively. I did set my total at a 147. Both of these teams are looking to run a little bit more tempo, and I do think that Temple is going to get much more open looks than they've gotten all season long. And it is a Temple team that, to their credit, they scored at least 70 points now in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, this Wright team has been able to exceed 69 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So looking at the over and the points here with Temple, 731, 732 on the betting board. Illinois, Chicago, UIC plays versus Drake, and the Drake is a 8.5 to a 9-point favorite. Your total on this game is between 146.5 and 147.5 with the Drake. I did set them as a favorite of 9.5 points. So circumstance where I'm going to be willing to lay 8.5. This Drake team is a top 75 team in the country in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've got by far the best player out there in the floor. Tucker DeVries does it all. 20 points, 6 boards, 3+ assists per contest, shoots it relatively well from 3-point range, but for Drake, they also do a nice job of being a top 100 team with regards to rebound rate, with Darnell Brody being able to chip in their 8 rebounds per game against a UIC team that they continue to lock you down from 3-point range. They are 31st in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and they've got a few guys who are able to put the ball in the bucket themselves. Isaiah Rivera comes in from Colorado State. He's done a nice job supplying in that neighborhood of about 14.5 points per contest, shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. But Drake, they, in terms of their 3-point shooting defense, have been quite good at 32.5%. That does shoot up to about 35.3% in a roadside shoot record environment, but they're going to be able to make do with the ancillary pieces helping them out. Cooper Garland, along with Connor Enright, have been able to combine for 12 points per contest. You get out of these two guys about 5.5 assists per contest, with Enright shooting 42.5% from 3, and for Drake, they do a nice job of just protecting the ball. A top 25 team with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis. Going against a UIC team that they do turn the ball over north of 12 times per game, and for UIC, their calling card all season long has been defense. They have now given up at least 75 points each of their last 4 games, and for UIC, they strangely have actually given up more points per possession at home rather than on the road. UIC overall 112th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, but they're giving up about 5.1 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than in a roadside shoot record environment. Meanwhile, you've got a Drake team that I do think is going to be able to do a relatively solid job on defense, so they themselves do give up about 9.4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home, and they've given up at least 69 points in each of their last 4 games. But I do think that for UIC, they're going to have a tough time finding open looks against this Drake team. I did set my total at a 143.5. Neither of these seem to really push a lot of tempo, so looking at the under with Drake, I'm going to be willing to lay with them. Made them a 9.5 point favorite. 733, 734 on the betting board. Missouri State hits the road face off against Illinois State. Illinois State is a 4.5 to a 5-point favorite. Your total on this game, it is 135.5 with Missouri State. I did set them as a 2-point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. With Illinois State, I just feel like this team is really getting overvalued, and they're just way too mediocre on offense to really trust it. For Illinois State, you got Miles Foster, who's been able to give you about 12 points per contest, but Illinois State as a collective is shooting 29% from 3-point range. And what's interesting about Illinois State is that while their reputation, it feels like, is built on defense, their defense has just not gotten any sort of a boost when they've been at home. Illinois State overall for the season in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they're 143rd in the country, and they're giving up 3.8 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a roadside shoot record venue. Now, this is a Missouri State team that is very much in bad form right now. Missouri State is now outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, they're outside the top 160 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But for Missouri State, you're going to have the best player out there on the floor in terms of scoring, and Olsen Mason, who's done a nice job, give the team right around about 16 to 17 points per contest. Darius Buford on the flip side for Illinois State has been their main man, being able to chip in there about 13.5 points per contest. We have not seen him since February 3rd, though, so that's a bit of an issue. You've got Dalton Banks, who's able to dole off the ball, but with Missouri State, I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough on offense and just enough on the glass to be able to get this one done. As for Missouri State, you've got 4 separate guys on the roster that give you at least 5 rebounds per game, NJ Benson being the primary of them, 8 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. For a Missouri State team that, they turn the ball over a little bit more than Illinois State at 12 turnovers per contest, but it's not like it's demonstratively more, and it's not like this Illinois State team is doing anything amazing to be able to generate turnovers. And if you look at the overall rebound rate of both of these teams, Illinois State, despite the fact that they really don't have a ton of size, so you have to give them a little bit of credit. They're about 79th in the country with regards to their rebound rate, but I do think that Missouri State going to do a nice job of being able to match and exceed that at 48th in the country. Missouri State shooting now above 70% at the free throw line. That's big for them against an Illinois State team that has been rough with their offense all season long. Recognize that Missouri State is in bad form, but I think that this is a nice get-right spot for them against an Illinois State team that they rode a nice 3-game heater before scoring 45 points in their last game. I did set my total at 134, so a circumstance where I'm going to be looking at the under to go along with Missouri State outright on the money line. 735, 736 on the betting board. Troy, it's a road face-off against Louisiana. Louisiana is a 2.5 to a 3-point favorite with your total between 1 149.5 and 150. And with Troy, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. Here at the 2.5, I'm going to be willing to lay it. The men of Troy have been very good at being able to rip the ball away. They're a top 40 team in the country with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Their one Achilles heel, though, is that they give up the 3. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And you've got a Louisiana team that has done a nice job of being able to hit shots from the outside. As a whole, they shoot about 35% from 3-point range, with having Joe Charles have good versatility. 11.5 points, 9.5 boards. He's been able to knock it down at a 36% clip from 3-point range. And for Troy, it's been really interesting to watch him operate on the glass, because you got Thomas Stout, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. He's the only guy in the roster that really gives you north of 5 boards per contest. Yet they're about 80th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, you've got a Louisiana team that they're about 214th in the country with this regard, but famous folks, I do think is going to do a nice job being able to dish it out. About 11 points, 4.5 assists, and 2.5 turnovers per game, and he faces off against another point guard that has been very supreme in Christian Eugene. Eugene for Troy has given out 3.5 assists to 2.5 turnovers per game, chips in there 15 plus points per contest for a Troy team that they shoot about 35% from 3-point range. Their top 2 scorers in Miles Rigsby along with Eugene both shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, but we think that in the end, a little bit of a lack of a main rebounder for Troy, going to be a little bit costly in this one. I do like the way that Louisiana has really been able to operate down low, and this is a Louisiana unit that I fully recognize that they come in having lost 3 straight games, but the defense overall, it has still been pretty sturdy and stout. For Louisiana, they have given up fewer than 66 points in now 4 out of their last 7 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Troy team that has been a little bit all over the place with regards to their defense, having given up at least 78 points in 3 out of their last 4 games. So, interesting circumstance. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 2.5 with Louisiana. And in terms of the total, I did set mine at a 147. I think that both of these teams hunker down with their defense, and Troy, with the way that they generate turnovers, that's going to lead to a lot of dead possessions. So, looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Louisiana, 737, 738 on the betting board. Iowa State is going to be playing against Oklahoma. Oklahoma is an underdog of 9.5 points, and draw on this game, you're going to be getting it anywhere between 137 and 137.5, and with Oklahoma, I did set them as an underdog of 8 points. I'm going to be willing to take the 9. Oklahoma has still been a really good team in terms of locking it down from 3-point range. Now, Oklahoma has some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. When Oklahoma is in a roadside shoot-to-court venue, they are giving up north of 13 points more per 100 possessions rather than when they are at home, and that does have to be a little bit of concern. But the one thing that doesn't take a drop-off is their 3-point shooting defense. They allow opponents to shoot between 29 and 29.1% from 3-point range in both venues, and if you're going to be able to knock off this Iowa State team, you have to hit your threes. That's really the one place where they're vulnerable. Now, Iowa State allows opponents to shoot just 31.2% from distance at home. That goes to 37.5% in a roadside shoot-to-court venue, but for this Iowa State team, it's all about generating turnovers for them, and they do go up against an Oklahoma team that has been turning the ball over right around about 12 times per game. You've had Ortega away, who's been able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, giving you double figures. You've been able to get some relatively good production just across the board for this Oklahoma team, with Javion McCollum giving you 13 points per contest. Meanwhile, it's all about Keyshawn Gilbert and Taman Lipsby for this Iowa State team. These two guys have been able to do a really nice job of generating between the two of them north of 4.5 steals per contest, Lipsby being the supreme of them, but both of these guys combined for about 27 points, 9.5 boards, 9.5 assists, and Lipsby does shoot 37% for 3, and Milan Mimosilovic is able to shoot about 37.5% from the outside, but for Iowa State, you don't necessarily have supreme rebounding. Trey King is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, and you've got an Oklahoma team that has Jalen Moore, who's able to give you more. He's been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. Now, he's the only guy on the roster that gives you north of about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, but Oklahoma, 41st in the country in terms of rebound rate. Iowa State, not too shabby themselves, but they're more around about 88th. I do think that Oklahoma is not going to be able to duplicate what they did the first time around. That was being able to knock off Iowa State outright. That was in very early January, but I do think that this line has gotten a little bit out of control, even with Hilton Magic. I did set my total 134. I'm going to be diving in on the under, and with Oklahoma, did set them as an 8-point dog, so I'm also going to be taking a look at the points. 739, 740 on the betting board. Oklahoma State is going to be playing us at Central Florida. Central Florida is an underdog of 2 points, and your total on this game is anywhere between 139.5 and 140, and with Oklahoma, State, I did set them as a 2-point favorite. 2.5 is my minimum buy point on Central Florida, and Central Florida has been a top 20 team all season long in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The problem is they do give up nearly 20 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shooting court setting rather than at home, and this is an Oklahoma State team that's averaging about 15 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home, and they've got the best pseudo player in this game. That would be Javon Small. He's come up very big, 14.5 points, 5 boards, 4.5 assists on 38% three-point shooting for an Oklahoma State team that they shoot about 34.5% from three-point as a whole, but they do turn the ball over 13 times per contest. Central Florida, they don't generate turnovers the same way on the road as they do at home, but between Jalen Sellers and Jarius Johnson, you get about 3.5 steals per game. This team is in the top 50 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now for Central Florida, they need to have Sellers continue to up his three-point shooting numbers. He shot north of 40% from three-point range last season at Ball State, shooting just 31% from the outside this season. That goes to 30% when he is away from home, but he's been able to get a little bit more out of Mr. Avery. Marcellius Avery, he's been able to chip in there about 8.5 points, 4.5 boards, has got a nice 6'7" frame and some good versatility, shooting about 34% from three-point range. Now, it's very hit or miss with him. He has scored 6 points or fewer in 4 of the last 5 games, but when he hits, he's able to hit. And then for Central Florida as well, you've had CJ Walker be able to return to the fold, giving the team 5.5 rebounds per game, and I think that that's going to keep the Central Florida team very lively. You've got an Oklahoma State team that just isn't the same team on the glass as they were last season. 153rd in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, for Central Florida, this team is about 77th in the country in terms of their rebound rate. Abrima Diallo is able to give you multiple blocks, 5+ rebounds per game. Meanwhile, for Oklahoma State, other than Keon Williams, who's been very versatile, 8 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, you just don't have a lot in terms of what you're able to get down low for this Oklahoma State team, and I do think that that keeps Central Florida in this game. Anything north of 2, I'm going to be willing to take the points with the Knights, and did semi total 136. I just don't trust in either of these offenses really being able to excel in this game. So looking at the under and the points with UCF, 741-742 on the betting board. Colorado plays this to Cal. California is an 11-point underdog with your total 151 to 151.5. I did set Cal as the underdog in the spot of 11.5. 11 is the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. Colorado is a top 25 team in terms of rebound rate, and they've got one of the better home court advantages in all of college basketball, going to elevation, having to play at Boulder, very difficult for a lot of teams. And for Colorado, you've got a trio of guys that are all able to give you at least 13.5 points per contest. KJ Simpson, along with Tristan De Silva, then you're able to throw in there Cody Williams. These 3 guys have been absolutely magnificent, with Williams and Simpson both shooting north of 45.5% for 3. As a matter of fact, for Colorado, among the players that have been able to make at least 1 3, their top 8 in total, all but one of them shoot at least 40% for 3, with De Silva being the outlier at about 37.5%. Colorado is a top 15 team with 3-point shooting percentage. They shoot north of 42% from distance at home. And you've got a Cal team that's outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage and outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Cal, in a roadside shooting court setting, they do allow opponents to shoot 35.6% from 3-point range. They're, as a matter of fact, approximately 282nd in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. So they do have a pair of guys, Fardaws Amek along with Jalen Tyson, who have been able to do a nice job combining for about 18 rebounds per game. Both of these guys chip in their 12+ points per contest, so they've been able to give you some production there. Jalen Cohen has been able to chip in there about 13 points, but it's a little bit of a black hole. Pass him the ball, he's probably not going to pass it back out. Now, to the credit of Cal, they've been a little bit better with their defense recently. 73 points of fear surrendered in 3 of their last 5 games, but they've been all over the place themselves. And for Colorado, this defense has been much better recently. They had their game against USC go to double overtime, so that got airbrained and crazy. But if you look at regulation and regulation only, they've given up 73 points of fear in 4 of their last 5 games. Lone exception was when they played against Arizona, and with Eddie Lampkin being able to lock things down low, I do think that Colorado is going to be able to take it to a Cal team that just has not guarded the arc very well. I did set my total as a result at a 153.5. I'm looking at the over in Colorado, willing to lay up to 11 with them. 743, 744 on the betting board. Butler plays this to St. John's. St. John's is an underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. Totals between 153 and 153.5. Butler is a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the point. It's a St. John's team that just has not been the same away from home. They're giving up more than 17 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside shooting court setting rather than at home. And for St. John's, while you do have Joel Soriano, who down low has been solid, 12+ points, 9+ rebounds per game. You've got Dennis Jenkins doling out about 5.5 assists per contest. And St. John's hasn't turned the ball over a ton. They're only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, but The big issue for St. John's is that defense going up against the Butler bunch, in which you've got DJ Turning Up Davis, who's able to give you 12 plus points per contest. He's shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. Pierre Brooks has been able to supply about 14 to 15 points per game. He and Jabal Telford are combining to shoot north of 37% from 3. Telford, he's able to give you 15 plus points per contest as well. And for Butler, it certainly has been a case where this defense has been much better when they've been at home as well. Now, the 3-point shooting percentage defense actually does go up when they're at home. That's about 33.9% at home compared to about 31.1% in a roadside-core venue. But if you look at the overall defense, they're clocking in right in the neighborhood of about 169th in the country, but they're giving up about 11.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they are at home, and they go up against the St. John's team that certainly has been giving it up from the outside all season long, 135th in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. That goes up to about 37.5% away from home, and those St. John's should have a nice little edge down low with Chris Ledlam being able to give the team about 8 or so rebounds per game. You have had Butler do a relatively solid job mixing and matching down low. You've been able to have Jalen Thomas be able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. The 7-footer and Andre 3000 Screen, who comes in for Bucknell, has been able to supply about 5 rebounds per game as well. I do think that Butler is going to be able to do just enough down low to be able to get this one in and to be able to protect what is a very good home court environment. I did set Butler as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the small number in. Did set my total 152.5. 153, I think we've gone a little bit too far. St. John's is a hit or miss 3-point shooting team. You just have not been able to have Jordan Dingle find the same amount of offense that he had last season over at Penn. So you're at the 153, looking at the under, and willing to lay the point to point and a half here with Butler. 745, 746 on the betting board. Texas A&M plays us to South Carolina. South Carolina is a 4.5 to a 5-point underdog with your total 135 to 135.5. Set my line at 4.5, and I thought I was being very aggressive here. At the 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with South Carolina. The South Carolina team just continues to deliver on defense. Top 45 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And though Texas A&M is going to be able to win this battle down low, Texas A&M, one of your top rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, Texas A&M just can't shoot. They shoot about 27% from 3. You've been able to get good production all season long out of Wade Taylor IV, who's been able to supply you with north of 17 points per game, but even he has been shaky from 3-point range. Meanwhile, for South Carolina, it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, as we got DeLon Cooper, Colin Murray, Boyles, along with Miles Sute, who have all been able to give you between 9 to 9.5 points per game. And as I was alluding to with our good friend Blake Lovell, how about the way that Murray Boyles has been able to step up? He was a little bit banged up towards the beginning part of the season, but he has now provided at least 12 points in each of the team's last 6 games, 5 plus rebounds in every one of them as well. He has really been a nice cog to help out BJ Mack, who's been really your lone guy on the roster that's been able to give you north of 5 rebounds per game. Texas A&M is going to have Anderson Garcia is able to give you 8 rebounds per game. Henry Coleman, Therese Radford, these two guys combined for 12 plus boards per contest. So South Carolina is going to be a little bit outgunned down the glass, but with the way that Murray Boyles is playing, they're now about 46th in the country with regards to rebound rate. And for Texas A&M, they've been pretty rough at guarding the 3-point arc, 208th in the country with this regard. Meanwhile, you've got a South Carolina team that has been very good at doing the little things all season long. They're about 148th in the country with regards to opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, but you've also got a South Carolina team that has done a nice job not turning the ball over. You've got DeLon Cooper, who's able to give you 4.2 assists and 1.2 turnovers per game. Texas A&M, even though the offense has been rough, they also have only turned the ball over about 10 times per contest, but they just can't get shots to fall. They shoot only about 39.3% from the floor, and I feel like there's a lot of similarities with South Carolina and Texas A&M, but with South Carolina having Murray Boyles be able to step up, and the South Carolina team just coming in really good form with their defense. They had that just ghastly 101 points that they gave up against Auburn, but that is the only team this month that has been able to exceed 70 on them, and as a matter of fact, that is the only team that has gotten past 70 against them in their last 10 games. I do think that this is going to be a lower scoring slog that South Carolina holds in. I did set my line at a 4.5, so here at the 5, going to be taking a look at the points, and set my total 134.5, also diving under. 747, 748 on the betting board. Boston College plays us in Virginia. Virginia is a 1.5 point underdog with your total 126.5. With Virginia, I did set them as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be looking at them outright on the money line. It is a Virginia unit that has been rough with their offense. They have not exceeded the 50-point plateau in any of their last 3 games, but you know that you're going to be able to get turnovers with this Virginia team, a top 25 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. And an interesting circumstance here, going against a Boston College team that has only turned the ball over 10.8 times per contest. They're a top 40 team in terms of being able to protect the ball, but they are a bunch that they also allow a lot of wide open threes. Boston College outside the top 250 in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a Virginia unit that they just have not been the same defense away from home rather than at home. They allow opponents to shoot 28.2% 38% from three-point range at home, 35.5% in a roadside shoot court venue. They're giving up north of 19 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and they go up against a Boston College team as shooting 37% from three. Quentin Post, he's going to be able to win the battle down low. 16 points, 7.5 boards, 2 blocks per game. It's a Boston College team that is magnificent on the glass, but Virginia is well outside the top 200 with regards to their rebound rate, but I think that Ryan Dunn is going to be able to get it done. The only guy for Virginia that's giving you north of 4 rebounds per game, but does it all. 8.5 points, 7 boards, throws in there 2.5 blocks, 1.4 steals per game, and then Reese Beekman, he has just been surgical with giving out 6 assists, throws in there about 14 points per contest, while Isaac McNeely shoots 45% from 3. Now, that does fall off a little bit when it comes to ACC play, but even on the road, overall this season, he shot 46% from three-point range. You're going to need to get a little bit out of guys like an Andrew Rohde, Jacob Groves, Leon Bond. These 3 guys combined for about 16 points per contest. Bond and Groves both shoot north of 45% from three-point range, but with the way that Boston College gives it up from three-point range, I do think that Virginia going to find a way to bust through, and this Virginia defense, and you can say what you want about the offense, but defense has been there. They've given up 55 points or fewer in 2 of their last 3 games going against the Boston College unit that has given up now at least 77 points in each of their last 5 games. So, situation of something's got to give. I do default to the defense here. I did set my line at 3. I'm looking at Virginia on the money line and made my total 125, so also looking at the under. 749, 750 on the betting board. It is Minnesota on the road facing off against Illinois. Illinois is an 11 to an 11.5 point favorite with your total 155 to 155.5. I did set Illinois as a 10.5 point favorite. I'm back on Minnesota taking the points. Minnesota's covered all but 4 of their games thus far this season, and they just have been able to steadily improve. Now, if you do have trepidation with Minnesota, they have not been the same team on the road as they have been at home. They're giving up north of 12 points more per 100 possessions in a roadside court venue rather than at home, and the offense does fall off by more than 10 points per 100 possessions away from home, but Dawson Garcia, I think, is going to be able to keep this team lively. He's been able to supply 17 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, a little bit over a block per contest, while for Minnesota, you've been able to get 2 guys, Mike Mitchell along Cam Christie, to be able to shoot about 41% from three-point range between the 2 of them. You've been able to get about 21.5 points per contest for a Minnesota team that has one of the best facilitators in all of college basketball, Elijah Hawkins. Last year, he led all qualifying D1 players in terms of turnovers per game with about 4 per contest. This year, he's cut that down to about 2.8 turnovers per game while giving out 7.3 assists per game. That is 4th in all of college basketball. Now, they're going against an Illinois team that has been so supreme with their offense. They are technically a top 30 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis at home, but we have seen this Illinois team play out of their last 15 games, all but 2 of them, to the over. It's an Illinois unit that has given up at least 80 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Now, they've been able to get to at least 80 points in every one of those games as well. Well, you do have a Minnesota team that, their defense, it hasn't been terrible. They've given up 73 points or fewer in 2 of their last 3 games. They just couldn't hit a shot to save their lives against Nebraska, but for Terrence Shannon, he's been able to supply 21.5 points, shoots 34.5% from 3 for an Illinois team that is in the top 20 with regards to rebound rate. Each of your top 4 scorers and 7 out of your top 8 scorers all give you at least 4 rebounds per game. So it's a very balanced unit with Coleman Hawkins being so versatile, 13.6 boards, nearly 2 steals, shoots 39.5% from three-point range for an Illinois unit that has now fallen quite a bit with regards to their defense. Like I said, much better at home rather than away from home, but even that's starting to dry up. And for Illinois, they do allow opponents to shoot just 29% from three-point range at home, 38% in a roadside shoot court venue. And for Minnesota, they are shooting less than 35% from three-point range when they are away from home, but with Minnesota being able to do a nice job guarding the arc recently, they're still about 172nd in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but less than 30% in their last 4 games. I do think that Minnesota going to be able to hold in this one. I did set my line at 10.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Minnesota. And did set my total 156.5. Illinois is just playing harebrained games in general right now, so going to be looking at the over and the points with Minnesota. 751, 752 on the betting board. Seton they have to road to face off against Creighton, and Creighton is a favorite of 8.5 points. Their total on this game is 144 to 144.5. I'm with Creighton. I did set them as a favorite of 10.5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay this number. Seton has been able to do a nice job with regards to rebounding all season long. Top 50 team with regards to rebound rate, but now you have to go up against a big 3 in Creighton that I think is going to be able to win that battle down low. Ryan Kalkbrenner gives you north of 2.5 blocks per contest. He's been able to do a nice job being able to supply about 7 or so rebounds per game, while it's been actually Baylor Shireman who's been able to lead the way down low. 18 points, 8.5 boards, 4 assists, 36% three-point shooter. I like what I'm seeing out of Steve Ashworth as well. 4 assists per game, shooting 36% from the outside, and Ashworth was very slow to get going to begin the season, but the last game that they played against St. John's, that was the first time they failed to get to 10 points since January 9th against DePaul, where they pretty much just pulled them because they were up by so many points. So it has been very encouraging to see him be able to give the team a little bit more. You've also got a north of 40% three-point shooter, Mason Miller, who's been able to give you about 6 points per game. It is a Seton Hall unit that is well outside the top 75 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. So you do have a pair of guys, Dre Davis, Elamir Dawes, who are able to combine for about 26 points per contest, both shooting the mid-30s from 3 points, while Kadari Richmond does it all. He's been able to do a really nice job with 15-plus points, 5 boards, 5 assists. He'll throw in there a block, a steal per contest. He just does everything possible, except he shoots less than 25% from 3-point range. And it's a Seton Hall team that, away from home, they allow opponents to shoot 37.3% from 3, and Creighton, as we saw last week when they played against UConn, they do have one of the best home court environments in all of college basketball, and they've done a really nice job being able to lock down from 3-point range as well. This Creighton team, they're allowing opponents to shoot just 30.7% from 3-point range, and even though you've been able to have Jaden Bediako down low for Seton Hall, be able to supply the team with about 7.5 rebounds per game, I do think that Creighton does a good job down low, and they control this game. I did set my total 144.5. I think that they take advantage of this shaky Seton Hall 3-point shooting defense, so willing to have the over and willing to lay up to 10 with Creighton. 753, 754 on the bank board. Ole Miss is playing against Alabama. Alabama is a 5.5 to a 6-point favorite. Your total on this game is 166. That is set my total at 165. So you're at the 166. I'm going to be taking a look at the under. It is an Alabama team that is in the top 3 nationally with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and I anticipate that they'll give up fewer than 117 points in this one, but as we were talking about with our good friend Blake Lovell, it's been rough for this Alabama team. They have given up at least 75 points in each of their last 5 games. They did a nice job holding Mississippi State to 67, but they have legitimately given up at least 74 points in all but 2 of their games this calendar year. So that does make this a little bit of a roll of the dice. So you know what you're going to be able to get out of Mark Sears. 20.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, 1.7 steals on 44.5% three-point shooting. And Rylan Griffin is out shooting about 38.5% from the outside. Alabama certainly lives and dies by the 3 ball. And for Mississippi State, I just thought that they would be better on the glass. You've got Musa Cisse along with Jamarian Sharp, who've been able to combine for 4 blocks per contest, but they don't give you a lot in terms of rebounding. They're outside the top 150 with regards to rebound rate, and for Ole Miss, this has been one of the better 3-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Pretty much all but 1 out of their top 7 scorers that have made at least 1 3 are shooting at least 37% from the outside, and for Ole Miss, when they're away from home, they do allow opponents to shoot 36.2% from 3. That goes down to about 31.7% at home, which is a big reason why I did set my number at 5, because I do think that Alabama is going to be a little bit more shaky with regards to their outside shooting away from home. We have seen that from them all season long as Alabama. They are registering in that neighborhood of about 12.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than when they are at home. And you've got an Ole Miss team that certainly has been a much better shooting team themselves when they've been at home rather than when they've been on the road. Ole Miss overall, in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage, 19th in the country. They've been able to shoot about 37% from 3-point range at home. I like what you're able to get out of Matthew Morelli. He's been able to give you about 17 plus points per contest. And though their 3-point shooting percentage for Ole Miss has actually been a little bit worse at home, they just have been able to execute a little bit better and a little bit more crisp with regards to their offense when they have been at home. Alan Flanagan, he's really the lone of their top scorers that shoots below 35.5% from 3. He's been able to give you about 6.5 boards, 15 points per contest ball. Down low for Alabama, you should be able to have a nice performance out of Grant Nelson, who's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Does a nice job running the floor, but for Ole Miss, we have been noticing that this team has been a little bit rough with their defense as well, giving up 75 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games, but I do think that they're going to be able to do an okay job of holding up here. I do think that Alabama gonna whiff on a few shots from 3-point range to be able to help you out with the under and keep Ole Miss in this game. Set my line at 5, so here at 5.5 to 6, taking the points with Ole Miss and the under. 755, 756 on the main board. Arizona, it's road face-off against Arizona State, and Arizona State an 11.5 to a 12-point home underdog. Your total on this game are between 159 to 159.5. And it's at Arizona as a favorite of 12 points. The 11.5 is the max I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it with Arizona. There's no doubt about it. This team is not the same defensively when away from home. They are giving up north of 20 points more per 100 possessions in a road/score environment rather than at home. But you go up against an Arizona State team that, while they don't turn the ball over, they turn the ball over 10.5 times per contest. They shoot 42% from the floor, 31% from 3, and 66% at the free throw line. That is an issue. Now, for Arizona State, this is a top 125 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They do a nice job generating about 8.5 turnovers per game, with Frankie Collins being the main man with this regard. 2.8 steals, 14 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and throws in there about 2.5 steals per contest as well. But He really has not been able to pop it from three-point range, as Jose Perez is pretty much the only guy that sees meaningful minutes that is able to shoot above 33% from three-point range. He's been able to throw in there 13 points per contest. Adam Miller just continues to be inconsistent. He gives you about 12 points per contest, but he's not a great three-point shooter. Meanwhile, for Arizona, this has been a top 10 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and they lead the country in rebound rate. Going up against an Arizona State team that's outside the top 300, with that regard, Arizona State does not really have any down-low forces that you need to be afraid of. Umar Bello, meanwhile, he's averaging a double-double, 13.7 boards, block per contest, while Caleb Love gives you in that neighborhood about 5 boards, 19.5 points per game, shooting in the high 30s from three-point range. Pelt Larson has been able to give you 13 points. He shoots north of 40% from three-point range for an Arizona team that, despite the fact that they are one of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball, they only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest, and we saw this the first time around with Arizona just completely plastering Arizona State. That was 105-60. On that day, Arizona shot 8 of 20 from three-point range, but this was just really a masterclass with Arizona State. Turned the ball over just 12 times, but they lost on the glass 46-28. I do think that Umar Bello going to be able to control the glass once again in this one. Arizona State just could not get off a lot of good shots in general. Brian Selabongiu gave you a little bit of something down low, but I do think that Arizona, even though I don't think that they win this game by north of 40, they're going to be able to dominate this one once again. I do think that they're going to be able to put up a pretty big number on an Arizona State team that just has not been able to do a lot with regards to their offense. I did set my total 158. I do think that Arizona scores less than 100 in this game, but I could see Arizona State just not doing their part with regards to the total. So I'm going to be taking a look at the under, and I'm going to lay up to 11.5 with Arizona. And this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game, 7:57, 7:58. Oregon State hits the road face-off against Oregon. Oregon, an 11.5 to a 12-point favorite. Your total is between 137.5 and 139, and with Oregon, I did set them as a favorite of 14 points. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with Oregon. They've got N'Faly Dante back to the fold, who's been able to give you 8.5 rebounds per game, and they go up against an Oregon State team that, while you do have Tyler Bledu, who's been able to do an okay job being able to supply about 5.5 or so rebounds per game, and I do like the main scorer for this team, and Jordan Pope, who's been able to give you 17 plus points per contest. You really don't have a lot of pizzazz with this team. It's an Oregon team that is just significantly better with regards to their defense at home as well. They allow opponents to shoot less than 31% from three-point range at home. That balloons to well north of 38% in a roadside Chicago venue, and when it comes to Oregon State, their home and road splits are very demonstrative as well. Oregon State is 249th in the country with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up 20.4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and that's going to be an issue going up against Jermaine Cuisinart and Jackson Shellstead, who've been able to combine for 27 points, 5.6 assists per contest, both shooting that neighborhood about 35% from three, and Oregon has been pretty surgical with it. They only turn the ball over about 10.5 times per contest, even though they've been dealing with quite a few injuries. They've been able to mix and match, and for Oregon State, they just don't have a lot of depth in general. Dexter Cano is able to give you about 10.5 points per contest, but it's been rough for this Oregon State team all season long. They also score more than 12 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and you've got an Oregon State unit that has outscored 61 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. You've got an Oregon team that last time they played, it was a 60-58 nip tuck game in Corvallis. They won that game despite shooting 2 of 19 from 3. Oregon State, they went 2 of 18 from distance as well, but they were able to win the rebound battle. The Ducks were 40-30. I think that they're going to be able to do that, and I think they'll be a little bit warmer than shooting about 11% from three-point range. Did set my total 136. I just don't think Oregon State does their part with this total. Looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Oregon. Now we get the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. American hits a road face-off against Army. Army is a home underdog of 2 to 2.5 points. Total on this game is 121.5 with American. I set them as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number now. American has been rough with regards to their 3-point shooting defense. In terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they are currently clocking in outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. But who on Army is going to be able to knock down these threes? As you've been able to have Ryan Scovins be able to supply about 12 points per game. But Army is outside the top 325 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've got Charlie Peterson, great name, who's been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game. And Army in their own right, they're a top 80 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been able to do a pretty solid job of being able to lock it down from three-point range. Army, in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, 41st in all of college basketball. That actually shoots up, though, to about 32.8% from distance at home. That's less than 28% in a roadside shooting court environment. You've been able to have a little bit of production with Mr. Ryan Curry, who's been able to give you about 9 points per contest, shoots 33% from three-point range. But Army also shoots 58.5% the free throw line, bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. Despite playing slowly, they turn the ball over 12.5 times per game. And then Mark Rogers has been very versatile and good for American, 16 points, 6.5 boards, shoots 37% from three-point range as a 6'8", little bit of a combo player. Elijah Stevens has been able to give you 5 assists to fewer than 2.5 turnovers per game. And for American, even though this is not the world's greatest rebound rate team, they're about 120th in all of college basketball. Army more around 192nd, with Army just incapable of putting the ball in the basket and them actually being worse with their defense at home. I do think that American going to be able to get it done. I did set my total at 129. I do think that this is going to be close enough for late game fouling, and Army has actually seen a little bit of a fall off with their defense when they've been at home, and I do think that they're going to be able to score more than 60 points unlike their last 3 games as well. So going to be taking a look at the over and one to lay with American 306.503, 306.504. It is Lehigh playing us to Boston U. Boston U is an underdog of 6.5 points. Hold on, this game 138.5. I did set my total at 135. I'm looking at the under. Boston U in a roadside shooting court setting, top 10 team in all of college basketball. The guards points a lot on a per possession basis, going up against a Lehigh team that is the most up-tempo team in the conference, but now they've got reinforcements arriving. Keith Higgins Jr., who's been a top 3 scorer for this team, he's been back for the last 3 or 4 games, and he's been able to supply the team with 14 plus points in the last 2 games. He's looking much more like himself now, shooting about 34.5% from three-point range for the season. Tyler Whitney Sidney, he's able to supply about 14.5 points per contest as well, and they go up against the Boston U team that has been able to do a nice job hunkering down from three-point range. A big reason why I can only set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Boston U. It's a Lehigh team that they only turn the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, but they also only shoot about 31.5% from three-point range. And not like this Lehigh team has done a great job down low. Dom Perlin is the only guy on the roster that's able to give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. If you're looking at rebound rates, Lehigh, they're clocking in about 222nd in all of college basketball. Boston U, more around 126th, even though Boston U has only Miles Brewster being able to give you north of 10 points per contest. Brewster, 10.5 points, shoots 41% from 3. You've got Otto Landrum, who's able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game. Their top 6 scorers, all but one of them give you at least 3.9 rebounds per game. I think the Boston U is going to do a nice job on the inside. Boston U, well outside the top 3 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but this has been a defense that's given up 65 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. The lone exception was a game that went to overtime, and to the credit of Lehigh, in games that have wrapped up in anything less than double overtime, they've given up 70 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. So I did set my total 135, diving in on the under. I made Lehigh a 5-point favorite, so we'll take the 6.5 here with Boston U. 3 of 6.505, 3 of 6.506. Holy Cross plays us to Colgate. Colgate is a 12.5 to a 13-point favorite. Your total on this game between 139.5 and 140, and with Colgate, I did set them as a favorite of 12.5 points. I am seeing a few 13s out there. I'm going to be willing to take those points. It's a Holy Cross unit that has been very difficult with their offense outside the top 3 and with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but now they've got Bo Montgomery back in the fold. He was missing for 7 games in December/January, and he's been one of the best scorers for the team. He and Caleb Kenny have been able to combine for about 22.5 points per contest. Montgomery is really your top 3-point shooter that consistently shoots 3, shooting about 37.5% from the outside, and for Holy Cross, they do shoot just 65.5% from the free throw line, but they've been able to shoot about 36% from 3-point shot. The problem is they go up against a Colgate team that's been really good at guarding the arc, 34th in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, top 75 in all of college basketball. The guards points allowed on a per possession basis, while Holy Cross is giving it up from the arc, 359th in the country in terms of opponent's 3-point shooting percentage, well outside the top 275 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Colgate team that isn't great with regards to rebounding, but Keegan Records should be able to control things down low, 11 points, 6.5 boards. But you've got a Colgate team that, unlike in past years, where they've been like a top 10 team with regards to 3-point shooting percentage, they're more of a top 50 team this season. Braden Smith, 12 points, 5 boards, shoots about 32% from 3-point range. Meanwhile, it's been Ryan Moffitt, who's been really a good 3-point shooter, along with Brady Cummins. These two guys combined to shoot about 41% from the outside. Moffitt, about 4.5 boards, 11 points per contest. Cummins is able to give you about 7.5 points per game. And for Colgate, they're coming off of an unsightly loss against American. Wasn't due to the defense, as this Colgate team, they have now allowed 66 points or fewer in every single one of their games since the beginning of the month of February. And for that matter, this is a Colgate team that has allowed 66 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games, so it is a circumstance where I set my total at 136.5, diving in on the under, but I do think that Holy Cross going to be upholding this game. They've been able to do a better job with their defense, giving up 60 points or fewer in 3 of their last 5 games. Last time these two teams played, Holy Cross got completely lambasted by 30. That was a game where they just completely fell off in the second half, and for Colgate, they went 12 of 23 from 3. I don't see that happening twice, so I'm going to be willing to take anything north of 12.5 here with Holy Cross, and looking at the under, set my total 136.5, 306.507, 306.508. USC Upstate is going to be playing against Presbyterian. This is a pick'em game / USC Upstate as a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 140 and 141, and I did set Upstate as a 2.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the very small number. It's a Presbyterian unit that is well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. You do have Samaje Teague, who's been able to do a nice job of being able to supply the team with 12 points, shoots north of 40% from 3-point range, but Presbyterian is allowing opponents to shoot 35% from 3-point range, scoring 54th in all of college basketball, going up against an Upstate team that is outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They allow opponents to shoot 36% from 3-point range at home as well, but for Presbyterian, I just don't know how they're going to be able to win this battle down low. You've got Amir Langlis for Upstate, who's been able to give you about 7 boards per contest. Meanwhile, for Presbyterian, you really don't have anyone on the roster that's able to give you north of 6 rebounds per game. Presbyterian, with regards to their rebound rate, about 264th in all of college basketball, and for Presbyterian, it's been a little bit of a rhymeless, reasonless team in terms of the way that they're trying to generate offense. You've got Teal, who's been able to give you about 2.5 assists per contest, and you've been able to have Marquise Barnett be able to give you 15 points per game, but this team also shoots 66% at the free throw line. Not great in a Bentuck game against a Upstate team that they themselves shoot 65.7% at the free throw line, so both teams are on par there, but Trey Barneau along with Justin Bailey, these two guys in the backcourt of USC Upstate, they combine for about 26.5 points, 2.5 steals per contest, with Barneau being able to shoot 36% from the outside, and I do think that USC Upstate finds a way to be able to get this one done. They're one of the most slow and controlled teams in all of college basketball, and for this bunch, they've been able to do a little bit of a better job on defense in regulation, giving up 73 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games, going up against a Presbyterian team that their offense has been able to get it going, at least 69 points in each of their last 5 games. They've also given up at least 70 points in 4 of their last 5 games, so going to be looking at Upstate on this rather pick 'em line, one to lay up to a deuce with them, and did set my total at 142.5. I do think that both of these teams get to 70, so looking at the over 306.509, 306.510. Radford, it's a road face-off against Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern, a underdog at home of 3.5 to 3 points. Totals 139.5. I did set Charleston Southern as a 4-point dog. I'm going to be willing to lay with Radford. Radford, not the same defense that we've seen in past years. They're outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and Radford has been very much getting hurt from the outside as they're well outside the top 225 with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but their perimeter defense still okay. 117th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, going up against a Charleston Southern unit that's outside the top 300 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Charleston Southern, all season long, they've actually been giving up more shots from 3-point range at home rather than in a roadside-court environment. Charleston Southern is allowing opponents to shoot about 33.3% from 3-point range away from home. That's fallen out to 33.1% from distance at home, but I do think that the Radford guards just going to be able to dominate here. You've got Brian Antoine, the former top 50 recruit of Villanova, giving you 11.5 points, shooting 42.5% from 3. Meanwhile, DeQuan Smith, Keenan Giles, they combine for 5 assists, 30 points per contest, with Smith shooting about 38.5% from 3-point range. For a Radford unit that they only turn the ball over about 11 times per contest, Charleston Southern not bad at taking care of the ball, 12.2 turnovers per game, but still a little bit more significant. You've been able to have Tajay Kelly be able to supply 7.5 rebounds per game. Justin Archer on the flip side for Radford, he's able to supply the team with about 8 rebounds per game. RJ Johnson has been able to supply about 16 points per contest, shooting 40% from 3-point range, but he is the only of their top 5 scorers that are able to shoot north of 34.5% from 3-point range. And when it comes to this Radford unit, they're about 244th in the country with regards to rebound rate. You've got a Charleston Southern team that, meanwhile, they have been clocking in with regards to their rebound rate more in that pocket, about 279, so a little bit of a disadvantage there for Charleston Southern, a team that is only shooting about 41.5% from the floor. They've been really bad with their 2-point shooting defense, and with that being the main kryptonite of Radford, I do think that with that not being exposed, and Radford now being able to get to at least 69 points in each of their last 5 games, while Charleston Southern, they have failed to get past 65 in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that Radford gets it done in a little bit higher scoring affair. Did set my total more around a 144, so looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3.5 here with Radford. 306.511, 306.512. High point, they hope to not be a low point. They play us Winthrop. Winthrop is an underdog of 8 to 8.5 points, seeing a straight 9 out there as well. Total on scheme is 152.5. I did set Winthrop as a 6.5 point underdog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. While High Point has been a top 40 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, they're well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and in terms of 3-point shooting percentage defense. And for Winthrop, biggest thing that they need to cut down on is their turnovers. Winthrop, in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, outside the top 225 in all of college basketball, but High Point is only generating about 5 steals per game. And for Winthrop, I do think that they're going to do a solid job down low with Colton Tulford, Alex Stimmerman, KJ Doucette being able to combine for about 14.5 rebounds per game. It's a Winthrop unit that has been very good at being able to lock it down from 3-point range as well. Top 40 team in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. For Winthrop, they're about 203rd in the country with regards to rebound rate. Now, High Point, they are number 4 in the country in terms of their rebound rate. Much better on the offensive glass rather than the defensive glass, but you've got a pair of guys in Jocelyn Bodu along Kamani Hamilton who have been able to do a very nice job combining for about 16.5 rebounds per game. Hamilton is able to give you about 15.5 points per contest, while Duke Miles along Kezagifa, these two guys, they combine for just under 34.5 points per contest, both shooting the mid-30s from 3-point range. But I do think that for Winthrop, they're going to do a nice job locking it down from 3-point range. High Point, they do a nice job not turning the ball over, only about 11 turnovers per contest, so they've got that in their back pocket. But I do think that with Winthrop, getting Kason Harrison to be a bit more efficient, 4 assists and 2 turnovers per contest, with Winthrop being able to find a little bit of outside shooting as well, with KJ Doucette now shooting 37% from the outside. Out of their top 6 scorers, you've got 4 of them that will be able to shoot at least 36% from 3-point range, and this High Point team being one that does give it up from 3-point range quite a bit, that'll keep Winthrop lively in this game. I did set Winthrop as an underdog of 6.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to take the points, and also did set my total at a 156.5. I do think that High Point going to be able to generate a lot of second and third chances, while Winthrop makes a lot of threes. So looking at the over and the points with Winthrop, 3-6-5-13, 3-6-5-14. North Florida plays us to Florida Gulf Coast. Florida Gulf Coast is an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points. Total on this game is 144, and with Dunk City, I did set them as an underdog of 4 points. Here at the 3 to 3.5, I'm going to be willing to lay with North Florida. Now, both of these teams just awful with their 3-point shooting defense. North Florida 273rd in the country with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but Florida Gulf Coast, they are 310th, and Dunk City has good versatility with Zach Anderson being able to give the team north of 13 points per contest. He's been able to shoot it quite well from 3-point range, but on the flip side, you've got a North Florida team that does have some very good versatility with their own right. They've been able to get right in that neighborhood about 5 or so rebounds per game, and he's also been able to throw in their 9.5 points in Dorian James, who's been able to shoot about 45.5% from 3-point range for a North Florida team that, as a whole, they're currently shooting 35.5% from distance. Chaz Lanier has been one of the better mid-major players in all of college basketball. A steal, 19.5 points on 44.5% 3-point shooting, and for North Florida, they're well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. Florida Gulf Coast are a top 125 team with this regard, as they've had Keyshawn Kelman be able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, and you've got Isaiah Thompson be able to give the team 13 points per contest, but he's been inconsistent all season long, has been dealing with quite a few injuries, should be good to go in this one, but you just never know with him, and with them having to deal with the injury to Chase Johnson for pretty much the entirety of the season, it's left this backcourt very much hampered against a North Florida team that has not been able to really guard it well from 3-point range, but it is a North Florida team that they've been able to generate a bunch of offense, 74 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games, while Dunk City has failed to get past 67 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So, one to lay with North Florida, did set them as a favorite of 4 points, and did set my total at 144. I do think that things are going to be a little bit more muted with regards to the scoring. I saw 143 out there a little bit before, and at a 143.5 or less, looking at the over to go along North Florida, 3-6-5-15, 3-6-5-16. You've got Jacksonville playing host to Stetson. Stetson is a favorite of a 1.5 in some spots, and most other spots are a pick 'em. Totals between 136 and 137. I did set Jacksonville as a 2.5 point favorite. Jacksonville has really been able to rise up with regards to their defense. They were horrible at the beginning part of the season, but for the Jacksonville team, they have now given up 66 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games, going against some of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. Now, the key for Jacksonville is that they're going to need to cut off Stetson from the 3-point line. Stetson, they give it up from 3-point range, but they also pop it well from 3-point range, and Stetson is a bottom 75 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game, but Jacksonville has just been a completely different perimeter defense at home rather than on the road. On the road, they allow opponents to shoot 39% from 3. This goes down to 26.7% from distance at home. So, did set my total 136. Here at the 137, I'd be looking at the under. You've got a Stetson team that has been able to get some good production. Jalen Blackman, who's been able to give you 20.5 points per contest, and it's a Stetson team that as a whole, they're shooting about 36.5% from 3-point range, but that does take a little bit of a fall off away from home. You've been able to have a pair of guys do a relatively solid job on the glass. Josh Smith who has been out of the fold for the last few weeks. He was able to come back from injury, but now he's back out, along with Oben Gesirse being able to combine for that neighborhood about 14 rebounds per game. And Stefan Swenson could be the best facilitator in this game. 6 assists, or is in there 11.5 points per game. But for Jacksonville, the rise on defense very much tied into the fact that Bryce Workman is back in the fold. 7.5 rebounds per game, and he's been able to do a nice job being able to give this team about 10 plus points in 4 of the last 5 games. Not too much a shot blocker, but at 6'8", he's able to pop a few threes, while Robert McCray has been able to give you about 17 points per contest, a steal and a half per game. And for Jacksonville, they only shoot about 31.5% from 3-point range, but they've embraced being able to play defense once again. They had gotten away from it towards the beginning part of the season. It is back along with Bryce Workman, and I do think that that's going to allow them to be able to control this game. I did set Jacksonville as a 2.5 point favorite, taking them as a pick'em / a money line underdog, and here at this total at a 137, I'm looking under, set my total at 136.5. 306.517, 306.518. Navy plays us at Lafayette. Lafayette is a underdog of a point. Total on this game is 131, and with Lafayette, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. I'm going to be willing to lay with Navy. Navy has been up and down with their defense all season long. They're now outside the top 125 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis at home, they're a top 3 team in all of college basketball. And for Navy, this bunch is allowing opponents to shoot 33.9% from 3-point range, but I don't think that that's going to be too much of a concern against a Lafayette unit that does not have a single guy in the roster that's giving you north of 10.5 points per contest. Evan Hines, as a matter of fact, is your top scorer with 9.7 points per contest. Lafayette as a whole, they're shooting only about 31.5% from 3-point range, and for Lafayette, to their credit, they're a top 125 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Navy unit that they only shoot 29.5% from 3-point range, bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. But Donovan Draper, 9 points, 9 boards, 2 steals per contest. You've been able to have Austin Benjini be able to take hold of this offense with about 16.5 points per contest. You've had Mac McDonald, Austin Inge be able to combine to shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, but for Navy, not surprisingly, this is a well tied together, just good collective unit that has been able to generate more offense recently. At least 65 points in 4 of their last 5 games. They go up against a Lafayette unit that now they have been giving up a little bit more. At least 67 points surrendered in 4 of their last 5 games. In normal circumstances, that doesn't sound like much, but here in the Patriot League, that is actually quite significant. And I did set my total 131. This was an opener of 129, so if we could get back a little bit closer to that 129 on the opener, like the over, here at 131, it's a little bit more of a wait and see, but if you could get back to that opener, looking at the over, I took the opener myself, and with Navy, I did set them as a 5-point favorite. Going to be one to lay the number. 306.519, 306.520. Loyola Maryland plays us to Bucknell. Bucknell is a 1-point road favorite. Your total on this game is 132 to 132.5. Made Bucknell the 3-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number with Bucknell. You've got, in my opinion, the best 2 players in this game, as you've got a 7-footer Noah Williamson coupled with Jack Forrest, who'll be able to combine for about 20.5 points, 11.5 boards. With Forrest, he shoots 38% from 3-point range, and Williamson is able to give you a block per contest as well. And then Alvin Edmonds has done a nice job doling it out with about 4.5 assists to about 2.5 turnovers per game, which Bucknell, they are turning the ball over 12.5 times per contest, but Loyola Maryland, they're a bottom 100 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis because they do turn the ball over 14 times per contest. You've been able to have D'Angelo Steins be able to shoot 37% for 3, 9.5 points per contest, while Deion Perry chips in there 17 points, 3 assists, shoots about 35% for 3-point range, and Golden DK, he's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. Loyola Maryland has actually been a halfway decent team with regards to rebound rate. Bucknell well outside the top 225 with regards to the rebound rate. We allow Loyola Maryland more around 156th, but Loyola Maryland just has not been able to get any consistency on offense due to those turnovers, and got a Bucknell unit that has been able to step up in a big way on defense. In regulation, they have given up 65 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Loyola Maryland team that it's been rough for them in regulation because the Boston U game went to overtime. They have scored 70 points or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, in terms of the defense, they have given up at least 69 points in 4 of their last 5 games. So I do think the Bucknell going to do a nice job taking hold here against the Loyola Maryland team that's just having a tough time taking care of the ball, and outside of Deion Perry, they really don't have any scoring options. So Bucknell is a 3-point favorite, going to be one to lay the number in. Did somebody total 135 with the way that Loyola Maryland has been getting completely torched with regards to their defense. I do think that Bucknell is going to be able to turn those turnovers into offense, and Loyola Maryland at home turn 81st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage at 36.7%. So looking over and looking to lay it here with Bucknell, 306.521, 306.522. Austin Peay plays us to Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky, a 1.5 to a 2-point favorite with your total 147.5. I did set Eastern Kentucky as the favorite in this spot of more like 3 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Eastern Kentucky, they have been a bottom 30 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but for Austin Peay, they've been without DeMarcus Sharp, and there's a chance that he's going to be able to play. He was warming up in the last game, did not get out there, but he has been leading the team in darn near everything for Austin Peay. Points, rebounds, assists. you name it, he does it. But without him, this has been an Austin Peay team that's really cranked up the tempo, and they've really been able to hit the burners in terms of their offense. For Austin Peay, this team without him, they've gotten to at least 77 points in each of their last 5 games, and they have given up at least 76 points in 3 of their last 4. So it has been intriguing to take a look on that front. But Eastern Kentucky, they're going to be able to control things down low. Isaiah Cozart is giving you 3.5 blocks that leads off college basketball, 10 boards, 15.5 points per game, and it is a unit that does shoot about 36.5% from three-point shot, to the credit of Austin Peay. In terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, they are checking in right around about 138th in all of college basketball, but they're still outside the top 250 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. They get completely gashed on the interior, and for Austin Peay, they're looking to be able to hit some threes to be able to hang in this game as well. So you've got a pair of guys in Desi Jones and Javonte Black, who combine to shoot about 39% from 3. Between the two of them, you've been able to get about 26 points per contest, while Isaiah Haney has been able to shoot 38% from 3. He's able to give you about 11.5 points per contest. I do think that Sharp actually returns in this game, but I think that he's going to be much less than 100%, has been able to give the team about 5 assists per contest. And with him in the fold, the team has been playing a little bit more slowly, but I do think that if he's not in a full capacity role, it is still going to be an Austin Peay team that is going to be looking to crank it up tempo. Meanwhile, you've got an Eastern Kentucky team that you want to talk about, a team that's putting up points. They have scored at least 75 points in every single game this month, and I do think that that continues. I'm willing to lay up to 2.5 with Eastern Kentucky, and did semi-total 151 looking at the over, and we wrap things up with 306-523, 306-524. Lipscomb plays us to Bellarmine. Bellarmine is an underdog of 11 to 11.5 points, totals between 150 and 151. I did set Bellarmine as a underdog of 11.5 points, so you're at the 11. I'm going to be willing to lay it. Lipscomb has been outside the top 275 with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but Bellarmine outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. They've got Bash Weiland back in the fold. Ian Ben Johnson combined for about 27 points per contest for a unit that they always turn the ball over 9.5 times per contest, top 50 mark in all of college basketball, but Lipscomb is able to be very efficient themselves, shooting 37% from three-point range. Typically, Lipscomb being outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate, having Will Pruitt be the lone guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. That's to their detriment, but for Bellarmine, they're also outside the top 250 with regards to rebound rate. You do have Langdon Henton, who's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game, but they give up all sorts of second looks, and for Bellarmine, this has been a bunch that's had a tough time being able to guard the three-point arc, 171st in all of college basketball. In that regard, Lipscomb certainly has had their issues there, 334th in all of college basketball with regards to opponent's three-point shooting percentage. That's shooting up to about 38.8% from distance when they have it at home, but I do think that this game going to be a little bit more controlled because Bellarmine is well outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game. And for Bellarmine, they just haven't been able to find their offense. They've scored 68 points or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Lipscomb unit that has been able to do a really nice job just being able to get points upon points, 85 plus in 4 of their last 5 games. But I do think that things are going to be a little bit more controlled with the way that Bellarmine has been really looking to slow things down. Last time these two teams played, Lipscomb, they were able to get the job done 81-70, and I do think that we're going to get something relatively similar here. I did set my total more around a 149.5 in order to get that 81-70. Both teams shot 42.5% per 3. I think that that'll fall off a little bit here, so looking at the under, I'm willing to lay up to 11 with Lipscomb, and that'll wrap things up for the Wednesday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Big thanks to Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways we refer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at JD_41. Keep in mind, there's the name does not matter, so as per usual, please send these into the timeline. Other way, it's fine an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, hearable fire and whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast, find that 5-star review coming at you guys every single day. Love the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.